This is a special meeting of the Clark County Board of Education. Primary purpose is to discuss Part 2 of student achievement reports. I'd like to have everyone stand and observe a moment of silence. Now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is adoption of the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Parado,
Second.
second by Ms. Ritchie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Anyone signed in for public comments? Okay. And then next up under student learning and instructional services, student achievement reports, Campbell Junior High School. Welcome, Mr. Howard.
It's good to be here. All right, I'll just, I'm not sure the format, but I'll just go through the questions, if that's okay, if you guys have any questions.
Do you have any things on the data you want to highlight?
Sure, we went up in every area.
Okay.
Every single area, significant growth, very excited about that. We smashed our AMO, which is our annual measurable objective. Supposed to be a couple points, and like I said, we went up over 6.6 points. So very pleased with the direction. Again, I'm not content, and nor is my staff, but I want to celebrate the things that we did well and then reflect on things that we need to tighten up, or including writing. You're very welcome. We'll talk a lot about that tonight, I promise. Well, not a long time, but
Okay.
so again, some
Any
things.
data questions?
Well, is GAP a data question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Because that's not one of my 4 questions. So.
It's in my response to the 4 questions, though. So if
Okay.
you want me to talk about it, and then if I haven't clarified
Talk
with
about
that,
GAP and how you're going to address it so that it doesn't become greater.
absolutely. Do you mean to skip to that part? There are priorities. I'll go to number 2. What are our school priorities for this year? GAP. We kind of knew this was coming based on the map last year, a lot of our formative assessments. And essentially we had to tackle the fact that a lot of our GAP kids ride the big yellows, right? So they get there in the morning when we get them there, and they go home as soon as the bus lot is cleared. So how do you build in time? How do you make time, right? So what we did, we completely redid our entire master schedule. So now that every student that is identified not proficient, we have them in an in-school intervention period. So we have 2 of those built in today. So that way, if you have a kid that is not proficient or novice in both reading and math, we don't have to pick and choose what we help them with. We're really excited about that schedule. Reading Plus has been extremely helpful because for our kids even can go beyond that 30 minutes because they can have access at home or the public library. So we're very excited about that. But it took a lot of work to be creative in building a schedule that would meet the needs of all kids. So right now we have over 400 kids in intervention every day. And some of them, again, we've tiered it, so we've been very intentional with our GAP kids in regards to response to intervention, KSI, or what's the new acronym we have? MTSS. So in that we've built in, so for our novice kids, for instance, we have them instead of the 30-minute, we have them in an hour intervention every day. So I feel really good. We're also setting novice reduction goals based on our GAP students. We're doing that in our PLCs right now. So not only we're looking extremely hard at the data and identifying, which GAP groups, specifically special education, and our free and reduced lunch populations are probably the 2 that we have the most work to do. We've invested a lot of time and energy this year in working with the co-op on, what's the best word, implementing with fidelity our co-teaching model so that we don't have 2 teachers in there and one looks like a paid assistant and one is delivering the content. And that does not happen any longer in our building. And those co-teachers actually have common planning with the content teacher that they teach with. The other change we made was we put the special education teacher with the same teacher every single period. One of the feedback that we got last year as a special education teacher, trying to plan with 3 to 4 different teachers and then providing instructional strategies that were individualized for individual kids became impossible. As you're talking about individual planning periods times 4 every single day. And we've had huge positive response with that, again, being intentional with those GAP students. So,
What are some other things that you may be doing differently, or maybe strategies that you've eliminated that you did last year and new ones that you've implemented this year? I mean, you've mentioned some of them. Are there other things that you've done away with, or?
Sure. Well, like I said, we added those extra intervention periods. We're doing co-teaching differently. We also hand scheduled this year. We used a different scheduling method so that we can individualize kids' schedules differently. We sent our math department to CMP3 training again. So the ones that did not get to go before, because we really felt like we're happy with the curriculum. We're really excited about the math department this year, which, we'll be honest, this is the first year I've been very excited. We made a lot of changes, staff-wise. So and I'd say we probably turned over 75 to 80% of our building in the last 2 years, and I think it's very positive. So those are some other changes that we've made to tighten things away. As far as what we don't do, we've limited distractions. We don't have big pep rallies. We don't have big events during the school day because it takes up instructional time. And I'm not trying to be a big ogre or anything, but if we're going to have our high expectations for our kids, then we have to build in and protect those instructional minutes. We also took a minute out of the transition bell schedule every single period. So instead of having 5 minutes, we have 4. That's done 2 things. It's absolutely tightened up any kind of behavior that we've had in the hallways, but it's also added those extra minutes every single day into instruction. So we're very pleased with that. Yes, ma'am. As far as some things, some reasons for our success, I feel like that I can stand before you, and we have one of the best staffs in the state of Kentucky. What you guys did as far as approving the raises will help me keep them. I think that the board and central office provided us Ms. Croteau last year, part of her salary. Promised her I'd mention her. As far as it being an instructional specialist, so she gives me another person in classrooms that can give people feedback when sometimes I'm torn. Again, you guys probably know we've been through a renovation, a significant renovation in our building. And I bring that up because I think, and I talked to Mr. Christie, before Christmas last year, we're still in a Dungeness building. Afterwards, at least half of our staff moved into new, fresh, updated technology, and the culture just shifted in that whole entire 8th grade. And to watch it happen again when we did it again, and seeing how kids respond. So I do think that the physical appearance, the technology we put in place is a huge reason, and I think that's why I'm so confident that standing before you guys next year, we will be at least proficient, if not distinguished. That's the vision. I think another reason is we have very high expectations for our kids and for our staff. Medium is not good enough. Adequate is not good enough. Kids in Clark County deserve the best, and that's what I intend to provide at the Robert D. Campbell Junior High School. Also with the new ELA curriculum, I think you guys provided that for us last year, or the year before, I guess, getting into that and now building in those extra opportunities for the writing part. We've also working with Ms. Ward, who you guys again approved as an extra position for us this year as a support, has been phenomenal. She's working hand in hand with basically K through 8, as far as I know, looking at a writing curriculum, also working with my ELA and other staff on our writing plan and tightening it up, which we were able to do again this year, focusing specifically on on-demand writing and the skills necessary and the strategies necessary to be successful. We also are going to have, of course, we had semester finals last year, and I thought that was great. We had the highest attendance on those days in the entire district. They were right before the break because our kids had finals, and that had never been done before. This year we're going further and making them K-Prep Lite, so they're going to be tested with their proctors. So we set up an alternative schedule for that. And we're also including an on-demand day, which we hadn't done before. We're very excited about that. We're going to coach. Again, we build in trainings to make sure we're scoring on demand correctly, and also and then going back and reteaching and doing live scoring. Hopefully have that training on January the 2nd, because that's the day we've got built in as a staff day. So we're spending the whole day on writing. I feel like it's a priority for us. I mean, looking at our scores, Our staff are very clear, I do not like it, and I'm not happy about where we're at, but they also know that I am a driven person and want to make sure that they have all the training and our kids have the skills to get those up. So, talked about number 3, strengths. Our culture and climate right now is fantastic. If you walk into Robert D. Campbell, smiles, staff are happy to be there, students are happy to be there. We had our dress up day yesterday. I think 99% of our staff dressed up. They were all themed, so every hallway had its own theme. Feel free to, I'll send you guys pictures afterwards. But little things like that, in my opinion, are a pulse of your school as far as culture and climate. And that was not the case 2 years ago. Very divisive, and I'm not going to make excuses. We are where we are. But I'm extremely happy, so I think a strength by far is that. Also reading, again with Reading Plus implemented last year, it's probably one of our highest areas. Social studies got us bonus points, so we did very well with novice reduction in social studies. It's something that we're looking into some strategies that department had, working with those students. Again, writing and gap are 2 weaknesses, glaring weaknesses. We talked about some things that we're going to do differently. And at this point, we also do vertical alignment meetings with the high school with our writing. Actually had a meeting last week. It was a fantastic meeting, ran by 2 curriculum coaches, one at high school and one at Robert D. Campbell, working with the 9th grade teachers. What are they seeing? What strategies they used, because their writing scores are pretty good. So we don't have to go out of the state or out of the district necessarily. We have experts right here. So looking into those conversations, it's been fantastic. So, and then number 4, what else we need from the list? Thank you guys very much for the calculators. Those are very, very, very needed. So we'll get them in hopefully in time to do our practice run. That we could have never done that before on K-Prep. But really, continued supports with upgrades in the building. I know you guys took care of a lot of that stuff before, and that's not directly instructional, but I'm telling you, it makes a difference with the culture. When people are proud of their school, proud of their building, they don't have to worry about the toilet not flushing or the roof leaking or air conditioner not working. Kids get too hot, then they have behavior problems. So your continued efforts and supports and upgrading the library possibly, or possibly the auditorium. And then also some more technology with iPads and laptops. Right now we're sharing carts for our intervention period specifically. So we have to share between math and ELA. So we do a blended learning, so it's not that we use them every single day, but 3 to 4 days of the week we do use them with, again, over 400 students. So trying to meet that technology need because of the way our schedule is framed is still something we can use some support on. And then, again, continue replacing older machines in the building. And again, some I build in my budget, but when you start with that many computers, it's hard to get it done as fast as you need to. So.
Dustin, what strategies, I know everybody talks about novice, and that's very important, but
Sure.
we need to make sure, too, we're focusing on that middle-of-the-road kid and that higher-level kid, too. So what, are you all having any type of strategies that you're hitting those
Absolutely.
with?
Part of, it's a great question. The flip side of those intervention periods is that if kids have mastered or are proficient during those time periods, they actually go to an extra enrichment. So they get enrichment in both social studies and science. And again, we look at that throughout the year, so it's not like you go in there one time and you're stuck in there. We just reshifted based on the math results. So we had kids that tested out of interventions. We had kids that tested into the enrichment part. We'll look again after December and redo those. So it's constant. We're constantly, minute by minute, looking at our data and making adjustments where we weren't able to do that with the schedule before.
Who handles do you have a specific person who zeroes in on what the data are saying?
Yeah, we have a couple different people. We have, of course, myself, and then Ms. Croteau, who's our instructional specialist, and Ms. Ward. We took a look at it first. Ms. McCormick, Ms. Mann have been support as far as the special education component. And then from there, we meet. I've got weekly meetings with our core content leaders. So we started there, and then from there, we rely heavily on our professional learning communities, our PLCs. The district did a really fantastic training this summer for the district leadership team on what true PLC work is, and looking at formative assessment and looking at data and how you set that up and how you do it as a team. It's not one person handing the other 7 a lesson plan and saying, here's what we're doing. But building those together, all of our now formative assessments are common formative assessments. They're all developed by the teachers based on pacing and where we're at. We also have common summative assessments, and those I'm not as concerned with those, because a lot of times if you're just testing once every 4.5 weeks, and that's the only data you're doing, you've missed out on 3 weeks where you could have done something differently. And that's been the big conversations within our committee meetings, and like I said, our PLCs are weekly, because they'll have common planning. So we don't have to do that before or after. We're being very intentional with the structure we have in place.
So you all do have common planning?
For every
Every
core
core.
department. So all the math teachers have planning at the same time, 7th and 8th, all
Yes.
ELA, 7th and 8th, all social studies, all science. And that was another part of the change that we had. And then now we've included those special education teachers on that same planning. So if you're co-teaching in reading or ELA, you've got planning with those guys now. And on top of that, again, tying that one special ed teacher to the one teacher. And then we're doing observations even within our school. So the 8th grade co-teachers are going to the 7th grade co-teachers class and vice versa. And trying to hone in on those strategies that are being successful. And cut out the ones that we've done for years, and it sounds like a great buzzword.
Okay. Any other questions for Dustin?
Just tell your staff, great job.
I very much, I will, because they work their tails off, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Come on up, Mr. Bowen.
Good evening. I'll just jump in, and I guess you guys can ask me questions, but I know I'll just fire off with the highlights. I think the big highlight for us, and I try to say this every chance I get, was probably with the ACT from last year, the composite with junior class. In a year, that was the last group of kids to take the plan test, and all the data pointed to another downward drop. I think through the whole course of the year, I kept painting a picture with the staff, was just stop the bleed. We need to level off. We can't, let's just level the drop, not drop. Let's level off. And I think through some intentional focus, a lot of intentional focus, and some things that we did differently, you saw not only did it level, but it jumped a point in the 10th, which up to 19.9 was the highest since we've been given the ACT. So it was that's a strong suit, I think. And then the other part goes along with it, I think, with our CCR. I can say we were 87% without bonus, but more importantly, out of the 87, almost 84% was college ready. Class of 400, I think is pretty phenomenal. I'll take that any year. So those are, to me, were our two big highlights out of the year. I guess, do you have any other questions, or do you want me to just go on to the questions? Or?
I have my gap question.
Okay.
What are you all doing to address the gap issue? And maybe what even, and I don't know, well, Dustin kind of alluded to this too. What can the board do to help with the gap intentionally?
Well, if you look at our data, I mean, we've done really well for the last few years, but we've improved in 4 of the 5 areas. The one area we dropped in this year was gap. We dropped 0.3 of a point. What worries me the most, I mean, we're making progress. We're on track, I think, to kind of be there in some of the other areas to meet our goals. But when you look at, nobody knows what's coming out of the Every Student Succeeds Act. We have no clue what's coming. We have no idea what's changing. The one thing that is a key component of that act is gap. So I know going forward, the gap novice reduction is a key component. We are probably pretty fortunate. I mean, I would say on any given Tuesday or Thursday, we probably have 250 to as many as 300. It has been as high as, I know, 400 kids going to one of the 2 intervention blocks that run during 6th period. We're also pulling during 3rd period now for math, I think, and then 8th period we've got interventions running. So we're pretty much at the max at capacity for interventions. I really don't know how we can add any more, because just based on the teachers, we've got every teacher, every chance they get pulling kids. And for us, and some of you know me pretty well. I've been here for a while, but I'm a very blunt person. But I know we're making changes below us. But the problem I have is it takes years for those changes that's happening in the primary to filter up to Dustin or to filter up to me. And you know, I think that gap is going to broaden, it's going to get wider. You know, we're at 54%. If you do the numbers, 54% is roughly 850 plus kids. Probably counting the kids that are not free and reduced lunch, those sped kids or African American with phone care, we could be talking as many as 900 kids right now. They fall into the gap category. And that's a large number of kids to try to focus on. You know, I think that as we move forward, you know, and I know that we talk about reoccurring expenses, we don't want to talk about reoccurring expenses, but you know, I think for the last 3 years, I've stood before you and I've talked about the need for intervention teachers, more intervention teachers to look at staffing allocation differently. They don't have to be assigned they don't have to be in GRC's allocation, but I think as we move forward this spring, I mean, I have a position that's open right now that I can't fill because I cannot find a teacher. And that's another person I could have in the classroom doing interventions, but simply, you know, and I've been actually going to Eastern and going to UK to speak to their student teachers here in December, but trying to recruit. But I can tell you right now, there are no math majors out of either of those two institutions, nor is there a secondary English major in December. So I'm actually recruiting a teacher from Campbell right now to middle school English teacher to try to come on board. But I think we have to look at that. I mean, when you do staffing allocations in spring, I think you're going to have to, if you really want to try to attack it, it's going to have to be some additional support, and because it's not programs for us. If you're in a high school setting, you've got kids reading on 4th or 5th grade level, you cannot put them in a group of 32. I mean, it's got to be in a smaller group. I'm telling you, in some instances, we're doing one-on-one. But I think that's something that has to be looked at in spring. And again, I'm not saying add to my allocation, make them district positions where you can do away with them as those gaps decrease. But I think moving forward, if you want GRC to continue to excel, that's an area that's got to be addressed. So, you know, the Reading Plus, I think, is making some differences for us. I think last Friday we were at the ACT, presented at the ACT Summit on our college and career readiness, and one of the things we talked about, there were a lot of questions in that group audience there that asked about Reading Plus, and when you can look at, and I'm not a literacy person, let me preface that right now, but if you can look and see that roughly close to 50% of a class has made 2 grade levels improvement in a year in high school, to me that's good. I will take that every year. Our sophomores, the kids in there, our sophomore data was even a little bit better than the freshman data. But the problem with that is you have to continue to ramp that up. And we have to continue to catch those kids who still didn't quite meet it next year as juniors, which also requires additional sections to be brought in, which requires additional staffing. Right now, out of the staff, and I'm grateful for Title I funding because that's where all my Title I money goes. Is into staff and actually into English and math teachers. I think we've got enough. I just talked to Miss Ellis, targeting another teacher that's graduating to bring on board enough money left in Title I to probably hire another full-time teacher second semester. There's enough money left. But, you know, finding those teachers is critical for us right now. But we have to have them. But the Reading Plus, I think, is made a big difference, or it's making a difference, and that's something that's going to pay dividends. And I know Dustin and I, you know, can't thank you enough, brother, because we work really well together. I don't know how many high schools and middle schools can share staff. I mean, we're already making plans for next year on how we're going to share some additional staff. But the vertical meetings that's taking place is great. I know his gap. It feeds into me, so it's my best interest to make sure little brother down here is doing well with GAP, and I know the dilemmas that he faces. He's like me. It comes down to staffing lots of times. So, but anyway, let's see here. What other questions you got? Did I address that? Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
I think I told you the bright points. You know. One of the things too, I think, is the graduation rate. You know, we're over 95%, which is pretty good. But that also comes back to the fact that we work with kids on an individual basis lots of times. We'll help a kid if a kid's willing to work. I'll work with a kid to help them get over the hump and graduate. some of our top priorities, I think, is probably continuing the ACT focus. You know, our 8th period class, basically now, we've got what was I time is now 8th period. It's a half credit class. All the juniors are in an ACT prep rotating for 4-unit rotation. Seniors, some of them are in CCR prep, trying to get them where they need to be, or they're working with COSA, work keys, just depends on kind of where they fall. Doing a lot of benchmark exams. We've had one, first big major test date was in August. Our second one will be, I think, the Wednesday we come back in January. Grades 9 through 11 will all practice ACT test. So I think that's a plus, and I do appreciate the calculators because that'll make life a lot easier come January. So they're already been ordered. They were ordered the day I got the code. The order was placed. So. Review sessions, and I think probably some of the things we've been looking at is kind of some ways to do some enrichment activities for the juniors and tie that into the fact, not just if you meet benchmark or you do well, but that if you've made a true attempt, we're going to try to do some things come springtime with the kids. Maybe go and see a play and do some different type of enrichment activities, and that's probably what some of the little bit of the contingency funds will be used for to fund some of that. So I don't want to leave any kid out, and that's the reason why I say you tie it to the fact that you try, just effort, that you can give them your best faith effort. So. Strengths and weaknesses, I think the biggest strength and our biggest probably drawing cards are our intervention program. I mean, daytime interventions is the only thing that works at the high school. You're not going to get them after school. It just doesn't happen. Senior CCR classes, you know, we're one of the few, there's not a lot of us out there that probably put every kid that doesn't meet benchmarking into 2 English classes or 2 math classes. And again, that affects your schedule, but that also pays dividends because as soon as Johnny gets his benchmark, he can drop. That's a carrot I dangle pretty hot and heavy. And also it's a gateway to get into co-op. We allow them to move into co-op once they get college ready, and they're knocking on the door and they know to come. I think if you're in the building, you walk upstairs on the 3rd floor, well, not 3rd floor, but 2nd floor on that side, but you'll see the CCR Wall of Fame. You'll see every picture that's up. Miss Crosby does a great job. She tweets it every day that somebody becomes college ready. The tweet goes out, and you'd be surprised at what that does to the kid, because the kids want to see their name up. And I've heard kids say, "Can I go see Miss Fiffin? I need to hit my benchmark." So I can't say enough about that because they're really doing well. The weakness is the gap. I mean, we're struggling in that area just because I think of the sheer size of it. And I know we're not alone. I know that's a common thing across all of Kentucky, especially the big schools. Question 4 about the needs list in particular. You know, I still go back to like I said, the interventionist. I think that's something we've got to look at in the spring, staffing. And I think the board needs to look at that hot and heavy.
How many do you think? What's the ballpark figure on that, David?
I'm going to say honestly, probably 3. Math, we seem to do a little bit better in math, and we've actually moved some staff around over the years. I mean, I think we've got the math figured out right now. Math doesn't seem to be the problem. English and reading is the problem. It just takes a lot more in-depth work in those areas. Miss Fiffin, Miss Huff, I'll sing their praises every day. I mean, if you come in the building, I know Kelly, I think Kelly's got some period of lunch duty, but you'll see her stand there on lunch duty, and you'll see the kids at her with her prepping, you know. And it's almost, I would say, she's probably not had 4 kids all year fail that didn't pass the test when they tested. So, you know, it's just it's a growing population. That's all I have to say. The other thing I think I'll throw out is technology. You know, we hear that number. You know, I think on my list, one of my top priorities was a stable Wi-Fi. You know, we are in a different age right now that we have to embrace technology. You know, I would challenge the board. You've got a healthy contingency. We need to be looking at some one-to-one initiatives. You know, we see districts. When I see districts from Eastern Kentucky that are in low socioeconomic, invested money over the years to go to one-to-one. I mean, I think that Clark County needs to be looking at that. I think and they need to be setting the pace here in Central Kentucky. And I think you're all in a position you can do that. You know, one of the things I mentioned earlier, and I don't know if ACT is going to stay around. We may go very well go to the SATs. I'm almost a proponent of going to the SATs if they throw in the PSAT as a measure as well with it. But when I say that, that's also, I know that's a lot more change in mindset because we've got to teach kids to be more analytical, more thinkers. But I would much rather have my personal kids be able to think, problem solve. I think that's the gateway to the future. But you know, and the ironic thing to me, when I think I sent this to a bunch of my cabinet, was the news feed that came out. I think Dr. Manny Kalk, or what the guy from, I don't know if he's a doctor or not, but Kalk anyways, on one of the committees with the commissioner on looking at the new assessments, one of his work groups. I don't know if you saw it or not, but what Fayette County announced they were doing. School board's paying for PSAT testing for, I think, freshmen and sophomores, I believe. So that leads me to think that if you're on that work group, you probably know the direction we're going in. And I think if, you know, that's the case, that if we end up going that way, that's something that we need to be, we need to jump on board too, because it's a total game changer. It's a big change in mindset. If not, then I think we need to look at, going back to what I said earlier, maybe looking at paying for the sophomores to take the ACT. We won't have the whole class will not test, I know that. But making that offer to those that do, I think is critical. And then I'll throw out a couple other things to you. I think that at some point, I think we're going to have some candid conversations, or need to have some candid conversations with the board concerning the future of dual credit versus AP, because I think we're coming to a crossroads with that. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty, I think, in the state with dual credit. I know Governor Bevin came out with his 9 hours, but I seem to, from what we're seeing right now, the community college versus the universities are totally on different pages. Everybody's in a different place. We've still yet to get a bill. We've still yet to see any money come into the district. So I'm not sure where that's going, what's going to happen with that. Depends on who you talk to. The last word I got, there was $2.5 million shortfall of unmet need to cover the state. But certain AP classes are wonderful and are great, particularly for those kids who are going to go out of state. And we've got some phenomenal AP teachers. But I think sometimes we might need to be looking at maybe investing, because the board puts a lot of money. You guys put a lot of money into the AP program. Maybe not putting so much money or splitting the money between that dual credit, possibly looking to fund some more dual credit classes. I don't know. I just know that that's probably a very candid conversation and a tough conversation. It's not an easy conversation because people are have different perspectives. I think it comes down to probably individual student choice, but then maybe that's when we need to develop tracks, pathways. You're either on the AP pathway, you're on the dual credit pathway, career pathway, I don't know. The other thing I would say is probably, I think we're getting to a point that, you know, if you look at the state says you can graduate early regardless of credits if you're college ready. We require 25 credits, and I've said this last year, and I still think we need to look at that. If you have an industry certification to the vocational school, why do you need Clark County's 25? Why not take the state minimum of 22? If you actually have your endorsement, you're ready to go out and be a welder, you know, I don't know that we need to hold these kids back. And I think that's another conversation for a later time. It's something that needs to be considered as well.
Some thoughts, I would say PSAT is probably not going to go away because it's tied to National Merit Scholarships. So that program is probably a lot more stable than Explore and Plan were. So.
We had, I believe, about close to, we had 3 classrooms that tested. So I would say we had probably around somewhere close to 80 kids that took the PSAT yearly recently. So probably the most ever probably for us.
How many in that class?
Probably about 400. So roughly, probably about 20%.
Yeah, if you're thinking that there's going to be a shift from ACT to SAT, that's a quantum shift. It's a different test. It's a different way of looking at things. And I actually think the ACT is a better test, but that's my 2 cents.
I think I don't. That's just from what I talk to my peers across the state, that seems to be what a lot of them think. Because when they altered Senate Bill 1 last year, the one thing that was stricken out was the word ACT.
Right.
It just simply says college benchmark. So, and there's also the biggest problem, if you look at the high school, there's no measure. The EOCs are gone. I mean, that contract's up and gone. So basically, the only thing we have left is the ACT right now. So there needs to be something, I'm an advocate of that, something at the freshman level. We need something down there
Yep.
for accountability purposes. Who knows? We may know, but about the first of the year, I don't know.
I doubt it.
It'd probably be more like June.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I appreciate your input on the AP versus dual credit question. That was something that bothered me throughout most of the year, and, very uncertain, a lot of uncertainty in terms of state funding, probably some money was released, but too late to do any good. I don't really know where that's gonna go next year, so.
We've got, I think, about 71 or 72 going to Eastern, and go to EKU, which is a totally different animal. Regardless of what happens at the state, they're taking care of their own program. But what worries me is we've got 91 juniors taking U.S. history.
Mhm.
All right, so I was banking on the fact that there was 9 hours of scholarship money, and it said you can only do in the law, in the package that came out, you can only do 6 hours per year. So I'm thinking, okay, these juniors have 3 hours. Well, now the last word we're getting, there's not enough money going to go around, so may not be any money for juniors. So I'm thinking, my God, I've got 91 juniors here that's going to be looking to pay for the second semester of U.S. history.
Yep.
Nobody seems to want to discuss that
Yeah.
anywhere. So.
Any other questions, Mr. Foley?
Just tell your staff, great job. Appreciate the hard work.
Thank you much.
All right. And last but not least is Phoenix Academy.
All right, at the Phoenix Academy, of course, we try to educate the whole child. And we actually educate them through academics, employability skills, and also citizenship and community service, which I think is vital for our population. And I'm just going to go over some of the things that we've really added this year, because we've had pretty good structures in place there. On project-based learning, we've added coding video games. The kids are really getting into that because, you have to figure out how you want them to move, and you go in and you actually code it. And that's, some of our guys are really, we got a new program, and they're playing around with it, trying to figure it out, which is really good problem-solving skills for them as well. So they seem to like that. Also, we're going to do in the spring semester, we're going to do a financial literacy, which I think is really good, especially for our juniors and seniors. And we're also going to teach them, once we teach them the financial literacy content, we're going to show them how to use Excel and Word and how to put it into graphs, things of that nature, just 21st century skills that they need to be successful. Also, we have some resources that we're using this year, something called Combat Code, an hour of code that is about coding video games. That's something that kids can really get into, and that's they're more likely to buy into, because our students at Phoenix, they really have to be engaged, and when they're engaged, they learn. So we try to engage them in various ways. Another resource that we've been using this year is called Newsela, and it's one of the best things I've seen as far as differentiation. And like you can actually go into Newsela, it's a program, and you can find out the kids' Lexile level, and you can, we can all read the same article, but it'll be on our level. So we still have good discussions, and no one else really knows what level you read, and it has questions and it has a writing prompt as well. What we're doing is we're having, like on Monday, social studies, they have to do Newsela. Tuesday, another group has to do it. So we spread it out so the kids don't have to write a great length in every single class for that day. So we spread it out throughout the week. So that way they have a set time and a set day that they do this. Also, every 2 weeks, we look at open response questions and how the students, how they responding, because we had a professional development on, actually we've had professional developments on writing. And this next one, we have one more coming up, and we're going to look at student work to see, what's our next step. So we are trying to improve on our writing.
Who's conducting those trainings?
Danielle Ward. Yeah, and she's been great with my staff too. She's very, very personable. She's done a great job. Also, we use the core content, the Common Core in math and math and ELA and all the state core content. And we use Apex. What happens at Phoenix a lot of times, probably 95% of our students come in behind, and they come in a great deal behind. And what we do with our 6th through 9th grade, because they're not behind on credits yet, we try to do a lot of interventions, and we try to close that gap. Because when they go back to their home school, they won't be as frustrated, hopefully. But once they get 10th through 12th grade, they usually come to us way behind on credits. So we're really focusing on a lot of Apex, a lot of credit recovery, things of that nature. Because they either come to us behind or behind on credits, usually both if they're in high school. And that's typical there. So, really, we really try to focus a lot on catching up credits or closing that gap in 6 through 9. We figured if we can focus on closing that gap, the better off we're going to be. We use a program called Moby Max, and it really, the students take an adaptive placement test. It assigns them where they're at, and I can go in and I actually look to see what their projection is. If they stay on the same pace that they're doing now, it tells me how many grade levels that they will improve if they continue the same way, which I think is very powerful. And it shows what grade level they're on, what grade level they continue to improve. And if they struggle a little bit, the teacher will go give them a couple more examples in that, and they continue to work. So. Also, our employability, really not much changed on that, except for we do have a community partner. We collaborate with Winchester Parks and Recreation. We take our kids there once a month, thanks to the Court Hefner's mini grants. We've got 3 of those, and we're really taking our kids. We actually bought a membership there, but as we go, we learn about different careers that you can do in the park system, which is really good. So and the kids really enjoy going there. Also, on my last page, we're going to go to Sullivan University to the Culinary Arts School, so kids can see, what they do in culinary school. And we're going to take them to eat at Chick-fil-A, and you wouldn't believe how many of them really want to go to eat at Chick-fil-A that's never eaten there. Sometimes you don't realize what other kids have not been exposed to. And I think that's great. We're going to tour Toyota. We're going to go to the College Career Fair at the high school, and transition fair for our special ed students. Trying to increase parent involvement. I would be lying if I said that's not a struggle there. However, we did have a chili cook-off and try to get some parents to come in. We even say, hey, if you bring a parent, you bring someone in, you get dressed down the next day, because dressing down is like gold there, because they get to wear their own clothes instead of having to wear a collared shirt or a Phoenix shirt. So they like doing that. Here's the thing that I'm probably the most proud of is the citizenship community service. We went to Justice on anti-bullying, read books to younger kids, painted their faces. Our students were very well behaved, and who else can be a role model for kids and say, hey, look, and it really empowers our students to a certain degree. We're doing our 3rd annual Veterans Day celebration, and also community service. One thing we've been doing about the community service, we go to a homeless shelter. We rotate to a city conservation program, homeless shelter, and we go to help organize clothes for the disadvantaged. We have a group that do that. I'm also starting something that's not up here. Is Mr. McNeil and I, we were talking last week. We're going to start something called a young men's club, to where we're going to try to go to Kroger, for example, for an hour, maybe once every couple of weeks. And I want to go talk to the manager and say, hey, because I want them to wear their Phoenix shirts, and I just want them to learn how to give and how to serve others. So, you know, we're going, like, for example, we're going to go in and, you know, just carry people's groceries out and put them in their car for them, just to show, hey, being a good steward, being a good person. So we're going to do like similar things to that. So we're trying to add to that, you know, more frequent. So, you guys have any questions for me? All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, staff. Thanks for the hard work.
Yes, sir, appreciate you all, thank you.
Back on that technology thing, in a couple of meetings I've been in the last week, one where David Couch was over the technology at KDC, or KDE, and then in some of the commissioners' things, the commissioners beginning to talk about this one-to-one initiative. I think eventually we're going to end up, that's where testing is going to be. You know, but I would tell you, and all these principals they all say they need technology. When we go to look at that, we need to keep in mind that as we increase the technology, the cost of the technology is probably 20 to 30%. Just buying it is only 20 to 30% of the cost of it. We're going to have to, this is going to involve more people to work on it. I mean, we've got probably 2 technicians that actually work on computers in the district, and then there's 3 or 4 others that go out into the schools and do other things, but we've got really 2 technicians. When we start to talk a one-to-one initiative, we're going to have some serious conversations also about increasing the personnel in that department to keep up with this. But now, I mean, that's in the last week, both the commissioner and the head of all of technology for the entire state have those one-to-one initiatives have come out of their mouth more than once. So I think that's a direction that we're going to be forced to go. The commissioner's pushing for it. Now, I don't know at what point does the state step in and bear any of the cost of that. Nobody's mentioned that part yet. So I don't know where that'll go. That's another one of the unfunded mandates or what it's going to be, but I've not heard anybody talk about where the money's going to come from to do that, but I have heard from at least 2 at the state level that's talking about this.
Okay. I've gleaned that similar information from the Commissioners' Weekly commentaries,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of focus on that, so. He's been pretty quiet about most things, but that's something that I've heard.
Interesting
about,
meeting
so.
today. Cora Hefner, myself, Cindy Banks, and we went to Bath County to a legislators' breakfast. And it was interesting, the conversations coming from our legislators there about the Senate Bill 1 and the take from the different partisans, how they're seeing it. The charter schools could be depending on how these next set of elections go this next week, could become a very big and quick reality to deal with. Some of those are saying when it does start, it would start in some of your more urban areas, but I think you need to realize if it starts in an urban area, they would be everywhere. I mean, it won't be set up that way. It'd be a statewide initiative if charter schools start. So.
Yeah, the last bill that failed was Jeff County and Fayette County.
Yep.
And then we would probably be next, so. Okay. All right, next up under Student Support Services, item number 3 is consider establishment and approval of Clark County Choir Booster Club.
What you have here, I guess, is Mr. Olson, his, parent support group has come before and asked to be recognized again as an official booster organization. They were a few years back, and I think at that point in time, there were some changes in staffing at GRC, and they kind of folded that account and brought it in under the school, and now they're wanting to go back and be their own entity. So I think the document you have here, I guess, is in our board policy for that. I will throw in, I think that when we do amend policies, again, we need to look at this one because I think the board's well aware that we've had issues with booster clubs, but we need to have in here about reporting probably. I think it needs to be specified. And I did talk to Alicia about this, Ms. Ellis, but we require them to turn in image checks quarterly because there's no way for us to monitor and be responsible for stuff after the fact. So, but I would support official approval of this Booster Club agreement.
In the agreement there, and I'm sure it's because this is just boilerplate, but it talks about being under the KHSAA guidelines. Do those guidelines relate to non-athletic groups?
They would not.
Okay. And another one said that all choir programs would participate in the fundraising or whatever.
I think what they're trying to do is they're actually, and this was kind of some of the discussion I had with Alicia, was the fact that Mr. Olson is at both schools. He works at GRC.
Okay, but the
Campbell.
agreement is only in the high school.
Well, that's what the conversation with Ms. Ellis was, that she wanted it just to be with GRC, because even though he was at multiple schools, and I guess this could include some of Baker's students, or
Yes.
Baker's program as well, that it fall under GRC. That I can't answer that, but that was brought, she answered that question, so.
Okay.
She advised that it just be under
Okay.
GRC.
So GRC will be responsible for anything that happens in that account,
Pretty much.
even if
Is,
something happens.
what's the
Mr.
core?
Olson, Chris Olson.
Mr. Olson,
Yeah.
is he gonna run that through your account at the high school? Or is he gonna have his own entity, his own
This
boosters?
is their own separate entity outside.
Okay.
Just like band boosters.
that's a big-
or
that's
any
a
other
big
booster
difference.
group.
Yes,
A big
it will
difference.
not be through our student activity account.
Because if they run it through boosters, then they can do everything themselves. If they run it through the high school, then they have to go by the Red Book training and everything like that. But they still have to go by Red Book training and some of that too, but it's a little bit more
There's some
lenient.
issues too in this about timelines. It's different than Red Book 2. It would
Yeah.
probably need to be, at some point, needs to be tweaked.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It says athletics when this isn't athletics. There are some others that aren't.
So if we approve this, if some issue ever came up,
It falls back on
that,
me.
okay.
Just like everything else has fallen back.
Next step.
That's why I said you need image checks quarterly, so we know ahead of time
Yes.
to prevent problems. I think one of the things too, I think was beneficial, of course, I'm not so much sure with them, but with the other groups, was probably some of the Red Book training we did back in the summer, which probably needs to be, needs to be done yearly, if probably not twice a year, because typically officers change
Right.
at different times,
Yes.
and it could solve a lot of problems.
We did too this year.
Yeah. And we argue a lot about semantics too in there. So,
Yeah.
trust me, I've dealt with enough.
Precision of language.
More than likely, if you've got a question about it, then it's wrong. More than likely.
Other questions from Mr. Bowen or discussion? If not, a motion is in order to consider establishing and approval of the Clark County Choir Booster Club according to the agreement and bylaws as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Ms. Ritchie,
I'll second that motion.
second by Mr. Wilson. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And next up is the Booster Club fundraiser. Established Booster Club, and it's not gonna have any funds
Taking me off of it.
It's all right. You could have helped me out a little bit, since I assumed responsibility. You got several, I guess it's fundraiser, I don't know if there's a couple of them there, is there just one of them?
Yes.
One is like tomorrow or
Thursday.
Thursday, okay.
Okay.
We are trying to make sure that those are, obviously is a requirement, so we're trying to make sure that we have all those fully documented for every booster club.
What's the lead? I didn't understand. $5 a lead?
Yeah.
Head.
Okay, thank you.
That's your writing program.
Sign him up for class.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions from Mr. Bowen on the fundraiser? If not, motion is in order to consider approval of the Booster Club fundraiser as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Wilson,
Second.
second by Mr. Parrott. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right. And the last item on the agenda is item number 5, board member self-assessment. Ms. Burgett from KSBA is here to help us. You all are free to stay, or you can go, or whatever you'd like to do.
I'm filling in for Miss Arlene. Nice to meet you.
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry.
Fine, how are you?
How are you doing?
Hi.
How you doing, ma'am?
How are you doing?
Hey, good to see you again.
Does anybody need a break? 'Cause
Yeah.
if you do
Okay,
that-
let's take a couple minutes.
Yeah. But I just wanted to have a couple of opening thoughts. First of all, we had 100% participation, so I got everybody's evaluation back. We had a lot of really thoughtful comments that I really appreciated, because as I stated before, the more comments, the better this session kind of goes as we work through what's working, what's not working so much, and what you want to do going forward to get a different result, if any. So I appreciated the comments. They were all focused on getting better. I tried to state them as best I could, and a lot of you had the same comments, so that was easy to do, consolidate them. But I appreciated that, and you'll see some standards are a little higher than others. So you won't want to necessarily take action on all standards, but I think by the time we get through all 10, you'll see a couple that'll stick out that you may want to prioritize for future action. So my role tonight is that of just a timekeeper, because we want to get through 10 standards. It takes a pretty tight 2 hours, and to take notes. But this is your all's discussion. I'm just going to guide you through the 10 standards. You can see the scores, you can see the comments, and then I want to hear from you all on what you think you want to do differently, if anything. Like I say, you won't want to take action on every standard. Some are pretty good. Okay, there are some opportunity areas, as every school board has that I've been in. There's not a one that doesn't have opportunity areas. But don't feel like you have to take action on every one of them. You want to prioritize them. So again, this is your discussion. I'm going to shut up, and we'll move forward. And just a couple of points, especially for Ashley that wasn't here before. So the whole point of this whole process that KSBA rolled out is to help us get better, whether we're in our job, school board, our regular job, whatever. We see value at KSBA in stopping, taking a moment, trying to figure out what's going well, what isn't, what do we want to change, what do we want to do differently. So it's very important to just have candid conversations. Sometimes it can be a little awkward, but that's the way candid conversations work. This is not personal. This is all about us getting better. And this first assessment is your baseline or your starting point. So it doesn't really matter where you are right now as much as this is your starting point. So you can see where you are a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And our hope is all the districts will improve their practices or their focus or whatever it is that they want to improve. Okay, so we see a strong relationship between student achievement and boards that routinely take the time to look at their own behavior and think about what they want to do differently. So with that, let's jump right into Standard 1. And you'll recall we have at the top of our ratings exemplary, meaning it exceeds a performance, accomplished, pretty good, meeting the performance, but maybe some room for improvement. And then developing, meaning you're demonstrating growth on meeting the standard. And then growth required is at the very bottom. Okay, so again, this is a baseline starting point. I'm going to record your comments, your discussion, and then we can go back and prioritize them when we get done. So the key 2 questions I would ask you to think about as we're looking at this: are there any behaviors or practices that you want to change? What would you like to see Clark County Board of Education do differently? Okay, so if you want to take a moment and just review the first standard, you can see the numbers, you can see the comments, and just take a few, just be quiet and let you all read for a second. And whoever wants to kick us off in a discussion, just jump right in. Any surprises? Because we all have our perceptions, right? And our perceptions are reality, but we can all sit at the same meeting and have a totally different perception, so that's totally normal.
As I look at number one, I mean, I see that one of the things I think that will help us, and we're doing right now, is our working sessions.
Okay?
I think that's a part of helping us plan our vision and direct our vision.
And how long have you been doing working sessions?
Well, I just came on the board in February, so
Okay.
that's all I can tell you.
Okay,
That's when they started.
so that's working, let's keep doing that. We agree? Working sessions are working? Any other thoughts? Looks like you've really been focused on data recently. You've definitely zeroed in on that. I notice you have back here, is this your vision or your mission? We
Yes.
join our community, yeah, okay, good. Other thoughts? You notice the scores are pretty much in the even, in the middle, accomplished, developing, till we get down to the last two. And then when we start talking about aligning our activities to our vision and our goals, we gear a little bit to the negative, and then thinking about how our agendas kind of proactively work with our strategies, that gears a little bit to the lower as well. Any thoughts on that? Any differences or anything different you want to try to do?
Well, the one thing I'd like to see on the agendas is, before we set the agenda, I'd like to see an email go out to all of us and ask us maybe what could be put on the agenda or
Any
something.
items or anything
Yeah.
we need to discuss?
Because I haven't had that since I've been on the board in February.
Okay, so input. Do you often talk about, in meetings too, about, well, maybe we should talk about this in the future, or maybe we could talk about that next
Yes.
month, or that
Yes, we
kind
do
of
that.
thing? Okay. So agenda input. Do we need a direction to do that, or can we just gear the conversations or put our request into the chair or the superintendent, or?
We can already do that.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Do we have?
Yeah, everybody's got my email, and everybody knows where I am and where I'm at, so me adding agenda items is not a problem, so.
Okay,
The issue is timing, I don't like to add agenda items, a day or two beforehand or at the day of the meeting, right? Because I
Or
think,
even at the meeting.
or at the meeting, that tends to be problematic, because I like to get the agenda out to everybody, we like to get the associated materials out to everybody, and that way the public has a chance to react and talk about it if it's going to be something controversial, or, sometimes things are controversial that we don't think are going to be controversial, but I think it's important to get that out to the public, and that's an important part of transparency.
okay.
So, what's Arlene's requirement for getting documents into OneDrive? I try to shoot for at least, latest Thursday before a Tuesday meeting is the absolute latest.
I
So,
would think that 10 days before any meeting, you ought to be able to get it
Well,
on
our
the
board
agenda.
policy says the Monday before
Actual meeting.
yeah,
before the meeting of the next week.
Yeah.
Monday prior to the.
We try to get the stuff all put in by Wednesday of that
Right.
week prior.
But the last couple of
It's
meetings,
busy.
it's been Friday
Yeah,
before we got
yeah.
board documents, and I find that to be a problem, but maybe that's somewhere else in here. I mean, when I came on the board 15 years ago, it was, if the then the meetings were on Mondays.
Okay.
We got the agenda packets the Monday before. When we started meeting on Tuesday, we got the agenda packets the Tuesday before. And now it just kind of creeps, and just getting it, on the
Okay.
Friday before you're gonna meet on the Tuesday is
Okay,
mean,
let's
yes, that's a
capture-
week.
Makes for a long weekend.
That's
let's
a
capture that
weekend,
one
yeah.
here, so we don't lose it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you get them by hard copy, by email?
They're on in the cloud.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Which if it's having a bad day.
And if the cloud's rainy that day.
Yeah, I hear you, yeah.
It's
well,
true. If you're visiting an elderly father that weekend who doesn't have the cloud.
Yeah, I hear you.
Or you live on Paris Road and you don't have the cloud. Gotta go
Okay.
to work to get it.
Do we have a yearly session on mission, vision, and goals? Or do we do that every other year? Or do we just do it as needed?
We sort of do it at our organizational meeting, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean,
Vision and goals were completely redone 2 years ago.
Okay.
yes.
So, and we'll revisit board superintendent goals and board goals usually annually, either at the organizational meeting or in January. So we've had a lot of change with redo of schools and a lot of those things. So I think the last set of board superintendent goals we established was be good for 2 years. I'd have to look and see, but I think we did it 2 years ago, it ran through the end of this year, so.
Okay, so everybody's okay with that, so that's not an issue.
That'll need to be revisited early
Okay.
part of next year.
But every 2 years is kind of your plan, okay? All right, anything?
Now, that's board superintendent goals, not vision.
Okay,
So,
yeah, mission, vision, and board goals. All right, anything else? What about involving your stakeholders? Are we okay that we do that adequately? Do we want to do anything different there?
2 years ago, was it 2 years ago or longer? We did the strategic planning. You know,
Okay.
we developed the strategic plan and had considerable involvement from community members in that endeavor.
Okay. 2 years ago?
And we've addressed several of those things.
We've
We'll
addressed
probably at
several
some point,
things.
We probably need to bring that back out and probably
Right.
start do some check-offs of some of the things we've done. We talked about some more even tonight, the
Right.
one-on-ones and things.
Not to jump ahead, but you're going to notice on community involvement, that's a little low too. So this might be an opportunity to bring both of those together, get your stakeholders together, your business, your chamber, your Rotary, your government, and kind of hit both of these at the same time maybe. Okay, you want to revisit strategic planning? Is that what I hear you say? With those stakeholders?
Well, that would be up to the board. My thing was, we just probably need to look at it to see what have we
Right,
accomplished.
just a review. I don't know if
Okay.
we need to revisit the thing in terms of preparing a new one
Okay.
yet. I mean, it was rather long-term.
Got it. All right. Anything else on vision-directed planning? Any comments, concerns, anything you want to talk about doing differently? Any practice or behaviors you want to change?
Well, something struck me tonight in one of the presentations, and I looked at our vision and our statement back there. I think the thing about looking at lowering our number of requirements to the state minimum, I wanted to use my infamous statement, we are not a minimum district. I mean, I understand for some of that, but how do you apply a certain set of criteria to a group and say, okay, it's okay if you get your 22 credits? I mean, does it have to be across the board for everyone when we do that? So that, I don't know, that's another conversation maybe perhaps
Might
sometime.
be.
But if we are joining with our community to address the individual needs of students in a safe, caring environment so they are prepared for college, careers, and life, okay, I understand that some folks can get out in 22 credits or whatever. But I'm still thinking they may be more prepared for college careers and life with those additional credits.
I think that goes along with, though, that's the ones that you lose. And he's trying to keep them. That's the
What he's
ones-
trying to do is help his graduation rate.
Right. That's
And
what
what
I'm
he-
saying.
There's a difference if
Losing-
those kids are 18 or 19 versus,
Well, what he's
15 or
trying to do,
16.
you got a kid there that is, and he's not talking about lowering it district-wide or school-wide. He's just talking about having that option to be able to give it to a kid, to dangle that carrot in front of him so he can graduate and move on. Because that kid more than likely is gonna struggle, what Ashley's saying, with it, making the 25. But I mean, it's just, you can make it, but it's,
And
you're
if I
probably
don't
gonna put them
make
on Apex, or you're gonna put them on some type of study program just to get them graduated. So really, are you doing them a service or not doing them a service? You know what I'm saying?
You bring them back the following year, they won't come back most of the time. If they
I mean,
turn
that's what
18.
he's not talking about, I don't think he's talking about lowering the.
No, not this, that's the way I took it.
So all of this is on an like, if we do.
Individual. You got an individual early
basis.
graduation
So
plan already.
We
That's
already
basically-
have that.
Yes, and that's basically what he was talking about.
Yeah.
But he was saying,
Okay.
but it's maybe looking at those that's on the technical career side instead of the college-bound side, that get out. If they get an industry cert, that's the same as having well, once they get that industry cert and they've met the 22 hours, and he's saying to keep them another semester, when they've got this certification, they can probably leave the school that day and go out and start making more money than the teacher that's making there right now.
Yeah.
Go on and get them out and let them, they've met the 22 that the state requires, they've got their industry certification, they've got a job opportunity, they can go out and start to become productive instead of staying around another semester. And what happens is they go out and they get a job and they end up quitting and staying on working full-time because they're making,
That's the way I took it. That's
Or-
the-
Okay.
Not that he just wanted to lower it
It's
for
an
everybody.
individual
Or there's some type of disruption to the school, it's just better because they're more hands-on type of kid. They're not a kid that's gonna sit in that English class and just get after it.
Now, that might be a great conversation for the working.
See our problem? We just got totally sidetracked.
Okay, but we're okay with our vision statement, right?
Yes.
All right.
Whoa.
So just to recap briefly, our working sessions are working. Agenda input as early as possible. We may need to talk about having advance notice of our board documents, getting those earlier. Our 2-year mission, vision, and goals schedule is fine. And our strategic planning, 2 years, we'll probably want to review that. Anything else on number 1? Any other thoughts? Because we got 9 more that you can go. Okay. Let's look at community involvement. Take a moment, and browse. Ashley, any thoughts? Put you on the spot. Surprises? Do you think it'd be higher? Do you think it'd be lower?
Reading through it, you've got 3 and 4 and 3 all on the same, are seeing the same things.
Yeah. I wanted to be inclusive though, so I
So
wanted
you're
to
not the
include.
only one that gets developing on a lot of stuff. Paul said we were tough evaluators on his annual evaluation.
You all are tough on yourself. Yeah. Which is typical.
Yeah, actually,
Well-
this would indicate that, so.
Yeah.
Much of the community engagement and the involvement of the community, it's often the same people.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, I think we are very engaged with
The little group.
that group
Yeah.
who come and do that.
You're
But
exactly right, Miss Amy.
community-wide,
Yeah.
not.
Okay.
Well, one of the people I'd like to see us get involved is more the parents, that level. I agree with Judy 100%. I think there's a select people that get on all these boards all the time, and they're the same people that walk in the door.
Yeah.
And when you go to any other meeting in the community, they're there as well. And it's great that they're involved, you know, I love to see that involvement. But, you know, yeah, here, we meet again.
Yeah.
And then the next day,
Yeah.
another meeting,
Yeah.
And then we start a committee, and we're just as guilty too, though, because we'll say, put da-da-da, they'll do it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So-
Well, if
The
you want
busy
something
people
done,
get
ask a
things
busy
done.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what about our business community? Is there more we could do there? Because 4 of us seem to think there is. So we have relationships.
Well, I mean, to me, the one that doesn't, I would like to see what their thinking was. I don't know who that was, obviously, but since 4 of us think we do and one thinks
Yeah.
we're accomplished,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not thinking on the same page as somebody else.
Community discussion. Have you ever had a community discussion where you invite your business, your chamber, the Rotary?
That's what I was talking about, have some community things, invite them, and then maybe invite parents and
Yeah.
do some stuff like that.
Feed them?
We've got one
Gosh, when
coming
you
up.
feed them,
We've-
you know,
we've got-
people
well,
will
We've got
come.
one coming up where we're inviting the public in, we're providing transportation from
Oh,
our
wow.
home schools for the parents, to get the parents into the schools to talk about drugs, drug
Okay.
use. We also about social medias. We got
Okay.
2 programs coming up. that, we're doing some feeding. We got some folks that stepped up, want to offer food.
Good.
Good deal.
So how does that involve the business community?
Well, that's the community as a whole.
So maybe a special invite to the business community, a phone call, a handwritten invite, you know, little things like that go a long way in getting
Well,
the business community.
it went out to on the chamber website, to all of their connections, the mayors and the county judges,
Okay,
internet connections, it went through them,
okay.
doing ads in the papers. It is a business that's providing the food.
Okay.
A few years ago, we did, I think either 2 or 3 years in a row, we had a meeting in which the fiscal court and
City,
the city commission and the school board had a joint meeting, a joint public meeting. And was that 2 or 3 years?
That's been, I don't think
we
I
did it
ever-
for about
It's been a
2.
while, it's been a
Yeah,
while.
it's been
a while.
I've never-
Not since I've been,
No,
Me either.
Okay, okay,
but we did do it for 2 or 3 years consecutively.
yes.
We
And-
did
and
the
that was
state of
kind of a-
education thing this past year, we did.
Do you ever have any conversations with the business community on their workers? Like, you know,
Yes, we used to have, and we don't anymore, it was the, a group,
What's the one?
it was when we were
What's the one that
targeting
achievement?
graduation
Okay.
rate and
What's the one
college
that-
and career readiness.
When
And so
you
we
look at
had
that,
a
who is
group
it?
from the
That was legislative.
schools and
No,
the
he's the
community
lady in the
college
community
and the
court.
chamber.
Core?
We
Is
met
it that?
monthly.
Was it useful? Was it
It was
productive?
useful, and one of the outcomes of it was the addition of the industrial maintenance or the industrial engineering program, the new quasi-engineering program at the Technology Center, and expansion of the health careers program at that session. And the folks, but one thing, when working with communities, particularly the industry, representatives from the industries in the industrial park, and they were very, very, they were very good members of those committees. You know, they provided valuable
Yeah.
input, and it was all about, we need workers who can show up on time.
Yep.
Do the
Read, write,
work.
yeah.
We can teach them to do the work. We don't care so much about the specific skills they have related to our work. We want them to have the show up on time, pass a drug test, the traditional soft skills.
Yeah,
write a resume.
yeah,
Yes,
interview.
yes,
Yeah.
and
Interview.
have interview skills, those kinds of things. But a couple of times, these meetings were scheduled in the middle of the day.
Okay.
And one time it was held here, a kind of a box lunch thing, and it was great. But then at 1 o'clock or 15 to 1, all of the industry people had to leave because they had work to do.
Yeah.
And it was almost like we in education did not show much consideration for, the value that they bring.
Right.
But it's at our convenience.
Yeah.
And, they took their box lunch and they left. And much of what we had discussed at the beginning, I mean, when you looked at the agenda, I'm thinking, there's no way we're going to get out of here for these people to go back to work. And we
Yeah.
didn't. And the beginning part of the agenda, as I recall, was a lot of school data.
Okay.
Just data, data, data. And then when we were getting into the meat of what they were going to provide, they had to go back to work.
So that was a learning, maybe
Yes.
if you do it in the future, you'll know.
Right, and we
Do it
haven't
differently.
made that mistake since.
All right, so I'll just put question marks there. What else about community engagement? That would be one way to have regular and sustained dialogue with local government, city, business. What about effective communications with students and parents? You have student recognition, staff recognition. I'm sure mom and dad bring the kids, right, to get recognized.
And then they leave as soon as the recognition's over.
Yeah, that happen, yeah. Other ways?
Well, I've got a meeting with the new newspaper guy. I met him at the forum the other
Good.
day. And I told him there's some things I'd like to talk to him about. I've got some ideas on things I'd like to do with the schools. I think that every day there ought to be pictures of kids
Yeah.
in that newspaper.
Yep.
Good.
So I'm going to talk to him about that possibility, but that's kind
Well,
of
they're
the
doing
board.
better.
We're given.
There's a lot more
We've also
positive
got-
articles in this other than used to be.
We also have now got it set up to where the Smoke Signals is producing regular articles for the newspaper
Right.
too.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it get more frequent than it is currently, but that's a start.
You said.
How about Smoke Signals runs the newspaper?
Yes, he's new.
Okay, got it. All right. Anything else on community engagement? Clearly, it's an area of concern according to your numbers. So I see 3, really all of them are 4 or more developing or growth required. So it must be on your minds. All right. Let's talk about effective leadership. What do you think about that one? Thoughts? Gordon, you're being awful quiet.
Yeah, I'm a quiet person.
You are? Do we have our meeting once a year or more with our councils? Like board council? Usually they get together about this time in the fall after the scores come out, or the board. I think that's in the policy where we're required to have that board council meeting once a year. Some do it more.
Well, our student achievement reports.
Yeah, that's what we're
Count
kind of
as
doing through
that.
that, through student achievement.
Okay.
Now,
We
tonight-
only had one site-based council that participated, so.
Well, and tonight, the council members were not introduced, but the council members were here.
They were
from
here,
those
okay.
schools, but neither principal introduced any of his or her members, or his members.
Yeah, there might be an opportunity to have dialogue with those folks, again, have a sandwich, put some round tables, talk
Yeah,
to
we've
each
done-
other.
We
Yeah,
have
done that.
we have used
Okay.
that format before.
Okay, just throwing out some questions. New board member orientation. I've heard you've had some turnover in the last year or two. Do we have an orientation type of process that might help people, might help your members kind of get grounded quicker? Because I know it's a lot. Not so much.
You never went through anything, did you? I did.
Yeah,
I
I
went
think-
through it, but I don't think
did.
either one of them
I
did.
didn't, did you?
Because
Gordon?
they were both.
No, okay.
Middle of the year.
Okay, that's a thought. And I think KSBA is working on something along this line too. And I'll just put question mark, something to think about. All right, what else? School activities, where we go to the games or academic meets, PTA meetings. I mean, I know you can't go to everything, but we have a presence in the school that sometimes helps the staff, know who you are and that you're there to support them and you're open to hearing their needs and their requests and resources that they need. Just kind of opening that dialogue.
We need to do better with that.
So I'd say just a visual presence maybe.
Yes. Because a lot of times if we're out and about, I run into Judy. Judy's always somewhere doing something. I think Gordy, you and Todd go to a lot of the football games and the sporting. I try to go to one of each at least, one.
Yeah, and that's not to say to go in and, tell them how to do anything or anything like that.
Right.
But just, be supportive.
Yeah.
I'm at the schools, I go eat lunch, because I've got a 4th grader and a 9th grader,
Wow,
so I'm in the school.
you're in school. They
I can
know
just
who you
tell you.
are. Okay, good. All right. What about input? Having input to board decisions? We feel like we have enough, too much, not enough? We get enough information, too much information? Any thoughts on that?
Now, what was that again? Repeat that.
Oh, gosh, I don't know what I said. So do we have?
Just the initial part of it.
Input into decisions. So do we feel like we're clear on our roles as a board member versus a superintendent versus a principal versus a teacher? So we have input into decisions that we have domain over. Maybe we get too much information sometimes and it just kind of confuses us. Maybe we don't get all the details.
Well, I hear from principals, a lot of the principals, they'll say, okay, we submitted this information, now we gotta come to the board meeting tonight and read it to you, word for word, after they gave it to us a week in advance.
Okay.
I do hear, I don't know what that would fall under, but that's
Okay.
one of their,
Inputs.
yes.
For their input.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard that, I don't know if anybody, but they're like, why are we giving it to you and then reading it to
Yeah.
you?
Well, I was part of the board for 20 years, and we went through cycles where we had the principals come to every meeting, and as sure as they were there, we wouldn't have any questions, of course. But
Right.
then as soon as they weren't there, because then the superintendent would say, well, if you have any questions, let me know, we'll get the answers, and as soon as they weren't there, you'd have a question.
I
So
think they
I've
need-
seen it go both
Yeah,
ways.
I think they need to come. I think they need to be open for questions, and I think they're fine with that. Their problem is they submit it to us and then have to
Yeah.
read word for word.
Yeah.
And I'll admit, and I've been this way since I was in school, I cannot stand somebody to read to me.
Exactly.
It drives me crazy. If I've already read it and you're gonna sit here and read it to me, you lose my interest right then.
Yeah, they could be here just for additional questions.
Right,
or
yes, if we have questions or
more,
whatever.
or historical questions or something like that.
Yes, I mean, that's one of the things that I hear. I mean, I don't know.
Okay. All right, what else? Good input. Dragging it out of you guys.
Judy's being quiet.
Nobody's as quiet as Gordon. I'm
Have I
sorry.
been
He
quiet?
gets
You're being
surprised.
quiet, yes.
Where have you been on these first two things?
Well, that's true, you did. Okay, let's start talking.
She wants to solve the high school problem, and we can't do that tonight, though. What about roles and responsibilities? If you're having board turnover, are we clear on our roles and responsibilities, or do you think that's worth talking about it?
Well, that's you two.
I mean, not here, but, that's a training we have. We've got some information on it. Doesn't have to be a training, but
Well, again, both of those are were in school systems, so I think
Yeah.
they've done really well of just coming in myself, but
I mean, we all need a refresher now and then.
Yes.
Which lane we're in, I mean, honestly.
But, I mean, they seem, I don't know, again, Judy, where you at?
Because sometimes when we know where we are, it's easier to be more effective. We know what our role is.
Right.
We're clear.
Yes, but I think where they've seen it from the principal side and then they come in here,
Yeah.
both of them have came in,
Yeah,
we kind of throw them in, or they were thrown in, and
okay.
so.
All right, any other thoughts here? Do you see your site-based decision-making minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, it's posted,
Yes.
okay, good.
But they really need some training on minutes. They
Like-
don't tell us anything.
Oh, okay, so it's
It
not
doesn't
about,
tell you anything.
not about action?
It's
Like-
more about, we got here at da-da-da-da-da, we left at.
Yes.
Approve
There's just-
this or approve that.
Yeah.
No detail.
None of the discussion about it or anything.
Okay.
In some cases, some are better than others.
Okay,
But for the most part, it's just really hard to tell what they've done.
okay. All right, any other comments on effective leadership? Before we get off of this, I did want to bring out, so our lack of focus on mission and goals. Is there anything you want to do with that comment? Is there any way to tie your mission and goals to your agenda items? Is there any interest in doing that?
That was my comment back on the first one. You know, I would really like to see us relate our agenda items to our mission and goals.
Okay.
That's how we got to the high school thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Would that be just by, like, star, or just
Well,
like a parentheses
well,
with what it is, or?
Well, just kind of like at the state board meetings,
Okay,
every item on the agenda relates to a goal that that group has set. And it will have in parentheses, okay, this is the item for action, this is the board goal to which it relates, this is the supporting documentation for it, blah, blah, blah.
okay.
And I don't know if other districts do that, but it, you know, every state board meeting I have been to, that's just the way they operate.
And that's how they keep their focus and their
Yes,
direction?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's not a bad idea.
And if it doesn't relate to a goal, why is it on there?
I can look at the goals, I could start possibly putting that in there, then that'll become part of my documentation that I've met the goals, because every item that comes
That'll
on
be
there
good.
attaches to one of my
That's true.
goals.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be on the agenda, so I'll put all that as
Okay.
supporting documentation.
Yeah,
That would be great.
That would help when your evaluation and all that comes up.
Do you have e-meetings? Do you use e-meetings?
Yes.
Okay. So you can tag it in there as well, KSBI
Well,
e-meetings.
ours is not through KSBA's
Oh, okay.
meeting, but our technology folks
Okay.
developed our
Okay,
methods.
all right. Any other comments? Okay. How we doing on time? Let me take a moment here and check it out. 7:43, okay, we're going pretty good. All right, let's look at data. So take a moment.
When we do these goals, it's gonna be my kind of determination, which goal it fits, or are we gonna end up
It's
with?
fine to start with.
I was gonna say, are we gonna end up with a 20-minute discussion on whether it fits that goal or not? That would be a concern. I don't wanna get into that coming in debating whether that meets that goal or not. And
Well,
just
we're
add to
gonna
it
we'll see the,
and prior to the.
right, we'll see
meeting.
the agenda,
Yes.
so we'll get that. And if, you know,
Okay.
I think this might work better with a different goal or whatever, sure, we can make that comment beforehand.
Okay. All right, so data. Positive that you're now using more data to make your decisions. I was impressed. You see the very first one is 4. 4 of you think that you are accomplished on that.
Unless it's just totally by himself somewhere.
So tell me about this needs list. How do we come across a needs list?
It's a needs binder now.
From all the schools, from the board, from the principals,
From
from
everybody.
everybody?
School and also office
Councils.
departments.
The want list, the Christmas list?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Some of it is maybe, but there's some very legitimate things.
How are you prioritizing that? That sounds difficult. Or you just starting?
Safety items go pretty quickly, and the board does a lot of the prioritizing of things, and
Okay.
there's other things that they're addressing.
Okay.
Well, that's some of the stuff that, you know, that needs to be talked about in the working sessions. and
Yeah.
Those type of things, to me.
Okay, well, somebody mentioned that, so I wanted to get the scoop on the needs list. All right, 4.1 is positive. If you look down, most of them are positive. We're definitely on the data gearing more towards the accomplished and not the growth required, so at least until we get to the last one. And honestly, I mean, no one has really used the self-evaluation process before, but again, this is your starting point, so that's okay too. So are there ways we can further tweak the use of data? Do you need more data, do you think? Do you get enough data?
For certain things, we probably get enough. But I'm never sure that we're, you know, sometimes we'll make some decisions, but then we don't prescribe follow-up as part of that decision. You know, we recently enacted some use of our contingency fund to provide additional funding for the schools, and specified 2 specific uses. You know, one for the arts, one for athletics. Okay, how do we know if that's working? We didn't ever specify. Okay, we want to see how many additional kids. You know.
Okay,
You know,
good.
what kind of comparisons are we going to get to know that that's working? If we have 600 kids enrolled in arts this year, how do we know that after we gave them additional money to spend, how are we going to know if that's working by getting more kids involved? You know, we didn't really specify anything about it other than, here it is. We feel strongly that we need to do this. And maybe we're not supposed to attach any strings to it. And maybe when we say, I want to see how this is being used, maybe they are looking at it, oh, they're always a catch, there's a string, those are strings attached. But, you know, when we're making a commitment of resources to specific things, how do we know it's working?
So maybe you want to set aside or set up a time in the future to reassess.
Yes.
Okay, revisit, reassess. Okay, good. Who else?
When you got positive up there, what are you saying?
I mean, it's positive, the first comment, the numbers are positive, so this is more of a positive standard.
Well, I'd like to see us, with the data, show more of what our positive data is doing, because we have some positive things going on in this
Okay.
district.
So give
Really
me an
positive.
example.
Yeah.
What would
Well,
you like to
You know,
see?
I'd like to see more stuff out there in the paper and stuff like that about being a distinguished district, missing it by, you know, 1/10 of a point, wasn't it, Mr. Christie?
Okay.
And.
No, we are a distinguished district, but a district
District
of distinction.
of
Okay.
distinction by 1/10 of a point.
Okay.
So I'd like to see, yeah, highlighting a little bit more.
Good. Okay,
Because that's gonna help you community-based anyway.
absolutely. It's gonna help your parents, your community, everybody's gonna feel good about it.
Yeah, and your businesses that
Yes.
come in here,
Yes.
and parents that are looking to come in.
Okay, what else? So this might get to the point of communicating those decisions to the public. This would help.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Because a lot of these, you know as well as I do, you've been dealing with, a lot of these standards overlap.
Oh, sure. There's definitely overlap, yeah. By design, I think.
Yes.
If they're not gonna get you on this one, they're gonna get you on the other one.
That's right.
All right. Anything else? Going.
in there.
All right. So climate and culture. How about that exemplary? I just gotta call that out right now.
That's what I was looking at.
Yeah.
And the other two are developing and growth required.
Well, again, it's perception. right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we all think about it differently. Okay, you notice the first two are trending towards a positive. Then we get a little more into the negative around assessing climate. How do we do that? There may be concern that we might need some training or we need to set aside some time to talk about it.
Well, how do we ensure that the superintendent regularly assesses the district climate?
Mr. Christie, do you have any thoughts on that? Discussion, maybe?
My question-
Walkthroughs?
But how does the board ensure that?
Yeah.
I mean, what sort of policy are we supposed to have that says the superintendent shall regularly assess the district
One
climate?
thing you
and-
have is the tail survey.
That's
an
right.
every-
My question is, how do you, what instrument would assess climate?
Tail survey.
The tail
Yes.
survey
That's
gives
every
you
other
some.
year.
That's every other year.
Yeah.
And then we do the bite lead in the off years, but that addresses more principals.
That's more the principals and the
Yeah, more
teachers.
Principals and the teachers, yeah. that's-
Yeah, we don't, but
No.
the board doesn't ever get
We don't get
That-
the ballot. no.
those results.
The
Now,
tail.
the tail, we should
The
get the
tail,
tail.
yeah, not the ballot.
Yeah.
Okay. I think a lot of it is about knowing your community and knowing the demographics and knowing the needs and knowing the outages and just being conscious of it. I mean, it's a little bit intangible. Maybe just having that discussion at a board working session on your culture
Yeah.
and climate, talking about it, sharing your perceptions of the culture and climate. I mean, I don't think there's a hard, fast document that's going to just, capture exactly what you're looking for. But you do look at the TAL survey, it
Yes.
sounds like,
Yes.
okay? Any other surveys other than what you mentioned? MAP scores, attendance policy, just throwing out some things. Expectations for all, observations, walkthroughs. Those would all kind of speak to your culture and your climate. Is this something you would want to have for a board discussion, a working session? An agenda item, 10-minute discussion?
Okay.
Well, if we're having difficulty discussing it here, what would we say there? You know, what is the conversation?
I don't know how you measure that, or how
Right.
you ensure that, but I can assure you that I assess culture on a daily basis, per school, per administrator, per department almost.
Every
You know,
conversation,
Every
every
conversation has,
meeting, yeah.
culture plays into everything that we're trying to do. And if the culture's not right, the strongest,
And I think the way you measure culture is being out there, and that's the way I measure culture, is being involved in those things, going to an athletic event, an academic event, open house, whatever, I think we do that every day. Now, like Mr. Christie said, what the instrument would be, I don't know. I guess your TEL survey, you could say that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't rely real heavily on an instrument, just like you say, the walkthroughs, the talking,
Yeah.
the way I think about it is like it's the things you do every day. So it's just how you do business kind of thing.
I think you can assess
What's
your
acceptable?
climate. I think you can, to great degree, you can assess your climate by the success of your schools.
Yep.
It's very unlikely that you're gonna have a successful school if you've got a very poor climate.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so here's an example. So I walked in the middle of your meeting tonight, so my initial thoughts are I'm seeing the staff here, and they're so involved in your meeting, and they're like, they're nodding, and they're like, yeah, yeah. And I could see, the passion. Like, and my initial impression was they're really involved in the school district.
All in the back two rows tonight.
Yeah.
There was all in the back
They
two rows.
were following every word you said. And then the presentations from the principals, all on the right things, the ACT, the PSAT, the college and career readiness. So, sometimes we lose track of what the outside thinks when they walk in, but that was, boom, the first 5 minutes, my initial thoughts. All right, I don't want to beat this to death, but it's certainly something you called out that, we're not really sure how to assess it. We haven't had these discussions. We're not sure if we know how, but just having the conversation is helpful. Anything else on culture and climate? And once you start reaching out to the community, if you get that business input, that's definitely going to be a thermometer as well. All right, learning organization.
I know this is about the board, but I can tell you that something that we did, that we just did, is having a day where we brought the principals in. We brought every community ed group that's supported in the schools. We had banners made, had posters made based on the success of the schools, and brought them in and recognized them, and had a photo up with the principal and the banners and the community ed leaders, the community ed people that was in for every single school. I mean, that was probably just an hour and a half long program, just recognizing just the community.
So you're talking about learning organization or culture? Or?
I think it's both. They come in and they work with their students, but at the same time, that's a culture thing where the community's in the school, and they're in the schools weekly. And in some cases, various parts of their organizations are there almost daily.
So I think that speaks to your expectations, your recognition.
And like, they've reported back to you, we have a record number of organizations that's in our schools now.
Yeah. All right, what do we think about learning organizations? Do we promote from within, kind of grow our own, try to encourage our kids to be principals and superintendents and teachers, and encourage them? We have nationally certified teachers. Yeah. Okay. Encourage that and give them a stipend. Yeah, cover their cost, or any incentive at all?
Well, it's a significant raise after they attain it, and
Yeah.
do we support them while they are seeking their national board
Just
certification?
in works, the occasional need for a sub or something like that, while they do some research, or they do something, or they go somewhere, we support them in that way. And they've spent so many hours in other classrooms. We work with that. A lot of it's done. The principals work with it, trying to do that with inside the building, but then I have provided subs for them to leave the district to do things.
Okay, what else? Board creates learning opportunities for themselves. Obviously, you're here tonight, right? Professional development. Somebody trying to get in or out?
I don't know what anybody else hears, but I do hear that we should do better on promoting within.
Like in what way? Like from,
From teachers on up. I mean, it's like, I think the impression is we're going to look outside the district, we're gonna look,
yeah, that's kind of a slippery slope.
Yeah.
You know, it's great to encourage your staff and, you know, support, but then, you know, we're not able to really get involved in that personnel part
Right.
of the board, so, but yeah, it's good that you shared that comment. Okay, what about professional development? We have a plan, do we assess the professional development plan as it relates to your school goals, where your needs are? So is our staff getting the training they need in order to raise the test scores of the subjects you need to raise? Is there a correlation at all, or do we just kind of leave that to the schools and the teachers and the
And
principals?
the principals primarily, it's an in-school decision, isn't it, Mr.
For the,
Christie?
I'm sorry.
Professional
He did.
development, so if there's a correlation between the professional development that you all support and then the needs of the district,
It's not chocolate.
Well,
leave that to the councils or,
some,
Yeah.
but we drive a lot of the professional development from here.
okay,
And, in order to do that, make sure that all the buildings are getting the same, trying to keep it.
daggone, Gordy, get bring it.
Time out.
That's driven here. District.
Time for a
And then,
chocolate break.
If there are individual needs, school needs, and we work to help them address those
Culture just
needs.
went up.
That's right.
We do the bulk of the schedule.
Hey, I have that
professional
candy, I
development
can
from
keep
here.
refilling that
all
one.
right.
Chocolate?
Yes.
Thank you, Gordy.
I love the honesty of the second comment. So we participate in KSBA sponsored trainings, but it's difficult to bring it back and make it work. So I think we all struggle with that a little bit. Do you all share, like after the KSBA conference, do you come back in your meeting and share what sessions you went to or what you learned, or
We used to do that. but we
have
got
a
away from that.
conversation?
Gotten away from that. We
That's
used to
something,
have-
that's something I think we could do in the working session.
Yeah, and we used to have it in our internal board business, and we talked about it at the board meetings so that we shared with our public, not
Yeah.
only with each other, but
Yeah.
also with our public.
That's a good opportunity, you know, to also capture it while it's top of mind, because if you're like me, you know, next week you're gonna forget about it, or you're gonna get sidetracked, or you're gonna go, what was that? So that's sharing and, you know, trying to make it useful immediately to your district, or get the information you have to the right people.
Do the hard candy.
All right. What else on learning organization?
Well, one of the things I'd like to see in our learning organization is to do a better job promoting to our parents of what we're trying to accomplish in this process of learning. You know, some of the parents, you know, they know about the ACT, but, you know, and some of them know about the EOC and all that stuff, but not all the parents know about it.
Yeah.
I think we need to do a better job of getting that out there and what we're doing through all the grades, like the MAP testing and what that entails and why we're doing it and those type of things.
All right, the what and the why
Yeah.
to your parents.
And, you know, the business people want to know that too, because they want to know where we're coming from.
What's in it for them? What are
Yeah.
they gonna get out of this? Do you have PTAs?
Yes.
That might be an opportunity.
We do a lot of this at PTAs. We do it at Title I parent nights
Good.
in every one of the schools, every one of the schools
You
now.
can't do it enough though, can you? I mean, there's never too much.
And you can't control how many come into
Oh,
it.
that's the truth. All right, good, good comment. Okay, anything else on learning organization? Do you all as board members feel like you're getting the right training, or is there something you're looking for that you're not getting? Any thoughts on that, especially from the new perspectives?
It probably wouldn't hurt. I would like to see maybe a new board member, whoever comes on board, just to have maybe a 2 or 3 hour session, I don't care what it is, on just some facts that they need to know in this process. You know, when you come on the board, just a quick tip sheet. And I know they probably have that, but I mean, there's some questions that you want to ask through that process.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be bad for the Kentucky School Board Association to have that training and kind of make that part of those hours that you do
Yeah.
the first year.
Yeah. So you're talking about like roles, responsibilities, finance, budgets,
Legal.
policy,
Legal.
legal,
Legal
Yeah.
and legal.
and illegal. All right, good. Budget, policy, role. Because so much of the public thinks, you know, you all are firing the cheerleading coach or whatever, right? I mean, that's what boards do. Or they're hiring somebody, not necessarily.
No, we hear you should fire. Why
Yeah.
are you not fired?
Yeah. All right, good, good, good. Anything else on learning or organization? All right. How about some problem solving? How well do we solve problems with partners? If you had any, of course.
Be dinner tonight, so we might have chocolate.
Well, survey says
Not very.
not too well. So, it's an opportunity, right? So we have opportunity to be more solutions oriented. We have an opportunity to look at things from different perspectives. We have an opportunity to be more collaborative with other organizations, having more dialogue. And that could, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I was just looking at this one from different perspectives.
Yeah?
You know, the brutal reality here is around this board table, half of us are educators.
Okay.
You know, we all come from an education background.
Yeah.
Our superintendent is from an education background. 2 members were former teachers and principals, another's a former teacher.
Okay.
So what
Yeah,
is that
is
variety
so
of perspective?
Rare. I don't think I've ever.
Oh, I know one district that has 5 former teachers as there are 5 board members.
Wow.
So you.
Well, I think that's where you've got to get your community involved, really, you know, get your parents involved, get some dialogue going, hear from your councils, talk to your council parent members.
Okay, well, we have one hairdresser that does talk to all those people when they come in to get their hair done.
Okay.
And I'm sure
Well,
one doctor over there that's probably hearing the
But-
same, so
Probably
we can
hear a
take
lot
that
in
for
the
ourselves.
office.
Everything.
But
Yeah.
also in that perspective, Ashley's running unopposed, Gordy's running unopposed, Judy's run unopposed, and Dr.
Okay.
Kudak's run unopposed.
Okay.
So there is a chance to be out there.
Yeah. They must think you're doing a pretty good job.
Yes. So
Okay.
Right.
So it's important really to reach out. And do you get those stops in Kroger and Walmart where somebody says, oh, by the way?
Kroger, not Walmart.
Okay.
I don't go to Walmart.
You don't go to Walmart? That's another conversation.
I don't go to Walmart.
Yes,
Yeah.
both here.
Buses are overcrowded or whatever the issue of the day is, you know, that somebody bullying or, you know, somebody has a question. Important to reach parents. Okay. Hear other perspectives.
You have to come and sit in my shop.
Oh, that's how mine.
because
I mean,
if
they're
they're pretty adamant, they're going to come and get on that
everywhere.
Yeah.
public comment list.
Yeah.
I promise you.
Yeah, I hear you.
If they want to talk, they're going to talk.
Yeah. Okay, looking at the comments, so we don't have problem-solving discussions, but we have work sessions, so there's that opportunity, right?
Yes.
More collaborative, less divisive, focus more on students and staff, not so much on our differences. Acting more like a team. So, you know, every once in a while, we need to hear that. You know, and there's nothing wrong with disagreeing. That's, if you all were the same, we wouldn't need 5 board members, right? So we need a different perspective. It's fine to disagree as long as we do it agreeably.
Well, I think that those are things that you work out in your working sessions. When you
Yes.
come to the board meeting,
Yes.
it's strictly business and move through
Yes.
your stuff.
Yes.
Because I think that's one of the reasons why you have the board session, or
Yes.
working session.
To hear different perspectives.
Yes.
But yes, problem solve. All right, what else on problem solving?
Do we need to take out states? Do we really need to take out states? Do we need to take out states?
What's the number one problem here in Clark County? What keeps you up at night?
Say it again, Becky.
What's your number one problem, educational wise here? Finance?
I think it's community
Attendance.
issues impinging upon the system. I mean, drug problems are present in our community, and it is a reality we have to face all the time. So,
Drug problems?
you know, and the thing is, you've got drug problems amongst the parents, and that really affects some of these kids getting to school clothed, getting to school fed.
Yes.
You know, being to school, I mean, ready to learn is, you know, kind of a bonus in a lot of these situations.
Yeah,
So,
we're all dealing
it's a
with
problem,
that.
big problem.
It is.
So.
But you're having this community discussion to talk about this, right? It's
Yeah.
coming up.
One.
All right, good. Anything else? The only thing else I would add is just, is there an opportunity to be proactive? So if you have problems, if you're identifying problems in your head right now, is there an opportunity to be proactive versus waiting, you know, till they get worse? Just a thought that I'll throw out there. All right. If nothing else, innovation and creativity. Board encourages collaborative partnerships, new ways of thinking, dialogue on differing perspectives. Actually, I wanted you to fuss at me for reading to you, but you didn't.
Oh, no, I was already reading ahead of you.
Okay, you weren't listening to me anyway.
That's what I do. When I'm reading, I just.
Understand. All right. So you see, this is a little towards the negative, although we do have some accomplished. So maybe it's an opportunity. A lot of districts on innovation and creativity have never really thought about this being, you know, within their scope. So maybe it's a new way of thinking. Creating that time to have conversations about your problems, brainstorming solutions, you know, being able to disagree. That's not going to work, but what if we tried this? That's not going to work, but, you know, you might eventually get to a better solution by having these conversations and creating that time to have them.
So what does that really look like in real life? If we were doing this okay, tonight we're going to talk about innovation and creativity. What does that look like?
What's the problem? But yeah, so what are we talking about?
Sound like?
Well, I think it depends on the problem. So you've got to be, I think the thought is to be creative and innovative around the problem. So if you're talking about drugs, what's the problem? Is it the kids? Is it the parents? Is it education? You know, I think you would just have a discussion about, do the parents need training? No. Do the parents need, you know, intervention? Are you involving your court system? Are there rehab opportunities, you know, places to offer help? I think that just brainstorming and not so much thinking about, oh, that would never work. Just boom, 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 brainstorming. And eventually you get to something that might work for Clark County. That's what I think creativity and innovation is.
Well,
Making that time to have those conversations.
One of the things that I think about there too is that you know, we talked about being in the community and doing different stuff and trying to involve the community. I mean, I would like to, at some point in time, have some board meetings at different schools and stuff like
Yes.
that, and different places.
Yes.
You know, don't get me wrong, I like this room, but I get tired looking at this 1960 wallpaper.
Okay, well, we'll agree to disagree on that
We'll
one.
agree to disagree
Judy
on
and
that.
I down
Been
here
there,
don't mean
done that,
fun.
disaster.
Is
Yes.
it?
You
Yes.
can't hear, we can't, nothing, it's off.
And the
on
folks
our
don't come, you know, the main reason when we used to do at least 4 a year. And you would anticipate that folks in the community in which those schools are located would show up and be supportive. They're not.
We tried to, even when we were doing that, we tried to have some student organization do something. That brought in the crowd, but then the place was packed, and then
And
the
then they
next
all
10
left.
minutes, they were stomping down the bleachers, everybody leaving after the kids did
Exactly.
their dance or their program, and then we were left sitting in the middle of a gym with,
No acoustics
Yeah.
and it's.
Judy saying, what?
But, you know,
I mean, there's not any other places that
well,
are centrally located to
well,
do that?
you know, the auditoriums was, they're, I mean, you got good sound there and good lighting and stuff, and comfortable seating, those kinds of
I
things.
would
But
think
it's
our
still
auditorium at the high
you're
school is
kind of-
pretty nice.
Yeah,
but
but you're
there's a
kind of removed.
disjointing thing. And then it creates setup
Right.
issues for our technology folks to have to go and set up that room for whatever we're gonna do. And then folks don't come, and if we need it, if Arlene or whoever needs a board document, it's not there, and where she can go next door to her office or whatever and get it if
It's a
it's
great
here.
idea though, and I think every school has tried it over the years with
What's the
mixed
verdict?
results.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it works for a little while, but yeah, I definitely appreciate the logistical issues. And then sometimes our board attorney always worried that if people were gonna show up at the board office and you're gonna be at the middle school,
That
if you
happened.
didn't post it, you know, and put it in the paper and all that, then they're gonna be, you know, irritated to say the least. So, but it's a good thought, changing the scenery, going to the parents, going to the community. If they won't come to you, going to them. Yeah, yeah.
Something we have never
Your
tried.
point's well taken,
Something
though.
we've never tried, maybe
You're
have a
probably
board
thinking
meeting
your
at a
house
public
too.
library
Yeah.
or somewhere, at a public place.
Where?
We've
What's
tried
that?
At the public library or
Yeah.
at the fiscal court office, you know, courtroom, you know, we've never.
We could have it at Hardee's on Saturday morning. I promise you, you get plenty of people.
Yeah.
It's not just Saturday morning, honey. You can go there any day of the week. They're Dairy Queen, either one.
Or McDonald's.
Yeah.
All right, what else on innovation and creativity?
So what are the risks involved?
Well, I think the risks are, it's time consuming. You're gonna disagree, so whenever you're innovative, you know, whenever you're brainstorming, there's gonna be some things that just aren't gonna work, but just making the time and being open to accepting that some things aren't gonna work. As
So
opposed,
do you accept that topic?
as opposed to
It's
not
just not gonna
talking,
work to go have a meeting somewhere else.
as opposed to not talking
I
about
can
it at
handle
all.
it. It won't be the first time I've been told no.
That's okay, you know, that's how we get better. That's how we get better.
That's right.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, if we're not clear on how we could be innovative and creative, then there's probably tons of resources and books out there. We could even do like a book study. Some boards do that, where they're, you know, do research on a book and come back and report if it's an issue the board is concerned about. I know Boone County does this book study 3 or 4 times a year, and yeah, that just popped into my head. So how can we get to be more creative and innovative versus routine? Sounds like what the third comment means. Thinking outside the box, I know we hear that a lot, but again, it's having those conversations that are a little awkward and uncomfortable. What if? You know, anytime you say what if, you're exploring different options. Work sessions, discussing possibilities. Do we have student voices? Do we have a student board member?
No.
No. Some boards do that to bring in that student And a lot of them make it competitive, so they can like try out, interview process.
Campaign.
Yes, well, yeah,
One
campaign.
district kind of does
Yeah.
the campaigning thing.
It helps it helps the students learn what the board does. It puts a little bit of competitiveness in it. It's a great learning for student board members. Obviously, they don't take any action, but they witness a lot, and they can report back to their student council. It's a way to kind of get the students involved in your boards, interested in what you do, how you do it, why you do it, all the dilemmas you face month in and month out. Just some thoughts. Project-based learning. Did we do that here? I think I saw one of the principals talk about that
Yes.
earlier. Yeah, service learning, project-based learning.
Yeah.
That usually is very innovative and creative. I loved hearing some of the ideas the one principal had. Rebuilding trust with district leaders. Thoughts on that? I thought you all were very open and very supportive to the principals, leaders tonight. The question you had, Judy, about what can we do to support you? I mean, not every board asks that. So, it's a new area for boards to think about, being creative and innovative, as opposed to just, look at your policy, look at your budget, the very tangible things. Think about how you can approach your issues here and be innovative and think outside the box. NSBA. Have you all been to NSBA, National School Board Association? No?
I've been
You've
to
been?
several earlier in my career.
Okay. It's always an opportunity for innovation and creativity. I know it's expensive, but most boards send 1 or 2 members a year and rotate it. That way, that person comes back and reports on.
We put our own way.
You pay your own way? That's even better. I know this year it's in Salt Lake. Is it Salt Lake? I think it's Denver. A lot of innovation and creativity there because you've got all the states there, tons of schools, tons of different problems. I typically came back from there, we're talking about National School Board Association. It's a way to get a lot of ideas. Networking, unbelievable. I mean, Judy, they bus you in and they bus you out. So you're talking to people at lunch, you're talking to them on the bus. It's usually the convention center. So typically boards send 1 or 2 a year and then just have them report back, but.
Where are they usually held?
Rotated, different
Yeah.
places.
I think last year was Chicago, maybe.
I went to one in Chicago and 2 in Florida and 1 in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I think I've been to 5.
Recent, how long
California.
ago has it been since you've been?
2009.
I would love to go. I would.
Think about it. It's eye-opening. It really is. It is
It's in the
eye-opening.
spring.
Yeah.
It's really.
Kentucky always has a great turnout. And actually, Carrie Schelling and our researcher that helped us produce this, we presented this last year in National and had standing room only at 8 o'clock in the morning on the last day. No other state is doing this, so everybody was really interested in it. So, anyway, that's my pitch for National. Thinking, okay.
It would be good.
I think that's really only ideas I had there. Anything else innovative, creative? Okay, let's talk about board member ethics,
So if you get stuff done for you,
conduct,
just have it.
relationships. And we're on number 9, how about that? So take a gander. We all have to have ethics training every year now. Thanks to some bad kids. That's the way it works, though.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, I said we all have to have ethics, we have to have
I know
ethics
that.
credit every year, thanks to some bad kids, so.
Oh,
That's the way
what
it
I didn't
works,
hear.
though, yeah. We all are in trouble because a few got in trouble, so,
That's life.
yeah. All right, so we kind of start here a little bit on the negative and we get a little better as we go down. But I think anytime we talk about relationships, you know, there's always opportunities to get better. So more transparency, everybody being on the same page, it sounds like that might be a concern for some of us anyway. More communication, it's hard to over-communicate, can't have too much. Knowing kind of our lanes, so are we establishing our policy and procedure? Are we implementing, you know, which one are we playing in? And then just, you know, everybody being able to agree or disagree agreeably and leave the boardroom being okay, which, you know, again, disagreement is quite healthy. And then just being aware that public is always watching. So no matter if we're on our best behavior or our poor behavior, everybody is seeing us, whether we want them to or not. Some districts have guidelines, so they call them procedures, operating guidelines, just something to consider. Like, you know, how do you get an item on the agenda? Or whatever it is, just procedures about how you do business here in Clark County. It's escaping me now what else, but there's a whole section I think that KSBA has on policy or on procedures and how schools can do business and how KSBA can help you write your procedures. That's just an idea. Again, you know, meeting guidelines, roles and responsibilities. What are your all's thoughts?
I have some issue about policy and procedures
Okay.
that, on the implementation particularly. This isn't my comment here, but it reminded me.
Okay.
The board is the policy-making body.
Mm-hmm.
But when we see policies that are not being enforced or implemented, what is the appropriate protocol?
Superintendent.
Indeed.
Yes.
And when should we expect follow-up related to that?
Well, I don't think there's a hard, fast rule, but it should be definitely within the very near future, I would think. Well, I mean, not to say that it's going to be fixed or, you know, some follow-up needs
Well,
to be.
when it's safety issues that are clearly in violation of board policy, and what happens if, you know, when the kids are out during, this is my soapbox thing, and I bring it up a lot. It still happens. Kids are out during the school day, allegedly on school business, driving their own cars, driving erratically in my parking lot at work to peddle whatever it is they're peddling. No adult supervision anywhere.
Okay.
What is the board's liability
You have a
when,
board attorney, is Ms. Combs your board attorney?
yeah, I have directed it to her as well.
Okay. Does she attend every meeting or just as needed?
Regular meetings and and disciplinary hearings and as needed.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, safety is always a concern. Policies, if you're not going to follow your policy, at least change your policy, because you don't want to have a policy and not follow it, because you're just going to write a check. It's going to happen. Maybe not tomorrow, but eventually you're going to write a check. Because if you have a
Yeah.
policy, you either need to change it or follow it.
Yeah.
That's always been my training. So I would say, yeah, policies, it's good to know our policies, know where they are. You know, we're not gonna know them all verbatim because there's so many and they change, but having that policy review is a good idea as well. Some boards take 2 or 3 policies a month, review them just to make sure we're doing what we say we do. Because more likely than not, you're gonna find something that's not exactly current that you'll wanna change. That's something to consider.
Well, we started that, going through policies, and then stopped.
And then stopped. It's
Too much came up, and then.
It's mind-boggling. I mean,
Yes.
it's mind-numbing, really, but it's just one of those things that I'm sure your attorney would appreciate you doing from a liability
It needs
point
to
of
be,
view.
yeah, because some of them haven't been updated in
Well,
years.
yeah, but that just scares me. When I see kids driving and there's no adult and they're there on school business, what?
They've been let out, or are they skipping?
So they're
let out.
fundraising, is that what you mean? They're
They're let out.
fundraising?
Some.
If you see them in your parking lot again, pick up the phone and call me, and I will personally be there. That's been addressed. You won't
Okay.
see them, you better not see them in your parking lot again.
Okay. Oh, she was there today,
Who was? A student?
a student.
Yeah, we had it today too. We were at lunch, but
Yes. Same student. One of the same student.
we'll be back Thursday. I'll let you know if
What
there's
were
an
they
adult
doing there today? I mean,
I didn't ask.
one of the students is
Your
one of
facial
your
expression was
employees'
just like,
daughters.
okay.
I don't
Yes.
know if it was family, I don't know, but
He wasn't there.
shouldn't have been any
The family
reason
member
for any
was not
school
there.
business of any kind there today at all.
Okay.
But I went to principal and teacher.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, other thoughts? Nine point 1.10, good job. Everybody comes familiar with the agenda, prepared to discuss, ask questions, take action.
Okay.
Do you have an item on the agenda for board member discussion, or where board members can bring something up? Some do, some don't. You feel like you have opportunities to bring something up as needed? Or do you need an agenda item?
I usually ask if it's a regular session, if you've got any additions to the agenda. So
Okay.
we can't do that for special sessions. but
Right. Yeah,
That's used fairly frequently, so.
okay. Yeah, some boards just put board member items on every regular agenda, and then, you know, Ashley might say, hey, I attended the fundraiser the other night, it was great, kudos, or, you know, you might have a question. It's not meant for a long
Surprises?
discussion, no surprises, no, we all hate surprises. It's meant for kudos, or, hey, you know, where are we on this, or something short and sweet. Some do, some don't. All right, what kind of improved communication do we need? Do we get email, phone calls, written letters? Yes, no, too much, too little?
From whom to whom?
From superintendent to the board, so, or from the board to the superintendent even. Our whole communication, I'm just looking at our first comment. Improve communication, more transparency. How can we improve our communication?
I get emails, texts, and calls from Paul, but now there's times that I ask him something and he forgets to text me back, but I just look at it as he's trying to run a school district, he doesn't
Right.
have time to.
He's a little busy?
Yeah, I'm like, okay, whatever, if it's
Yeah.
real important, I'll bother him again, if it's
Yeah.
not, I'll ask him at a meeting or whatever. But I mean, so that one's not me, I don't know.
So we feel informed enough?
I mean, I
I do.
Well, sometimes I do. Like, I did not know this had already been addressed, Mr. Christie. Right. The thing about the, you know, that I'd inquired about, I didn't know it had been addressed.
It's gonna be addressed again if they were there today. I'll tell you ahead of time.
And
I
maybe
mean-
she was there on family business, but he was not in the building
I
today.
don't know.
Like, I get that he can't, if I ask him to do something, I get that he's not gonna be able to call me back and tell me. I mean, like what you're talking about, I know what you're saying, you wanna know it's been addressed, but
And it
I
doesn't
also
have to
know
be
that he's
immediate.
got 5 of
Yes,
us saying,
yes.
hey, we need you to look at this, we need you to do that, so I don't know.
But, you know, maybe, you know, just a touch, you know, it's been addressed,
Right,
you know,
Just know
within a
it's
48
been
hour,
addressed, yeah.
you know.
Okay,
I'm working on
48 hour
it,
period or something.
right,
okay,
so, that wasn't, I don't know.
all right. Who else?
Gordy,
We might get one more.
I just need Gordy's got to have a comment somewhere through here.
He's probably gonna adjourn, that's usually.
No, that's my
No,
job.
that's her job.
No, Gordy always sits back and then he's got one good one for you before it's over.
You're not even gonna give him the adjournment, come on.
No, that's been mine.
All right, input of other members, so, you know, when we're not gelling, everybody's kind of looking. I think that's what the last comment means. And again, it's fine to disagree, but, you know, kind of working through it would probably be beneficial if we can find a way to do
I
that.
think I don't know when this was done. I mean, I can't remember, but we had a board meeting that got all kinds of confused.
Okay,
To where we have told Paul to communicate with us, Paul sets a meeting, wants to communicate with us, and then Judy couldn't be there, Dr. Kudak couldn't be there, and all kinds of emails started getting exchanged, and I don't know if that's where all this came from down at the bottom or not.
okay.
That's,
Oh.
you know what I'm saying, like, we tell him to
I think this
communicate.
No,
Was it before, or, I don't
this had to
know.
be in before that. I'm
Okay,
pretty sure.
because I didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was an area of concern for me, you know, usually when we get emails about, we have some choices about when we can come, and it was, we need to have a meeting.
And
2 days
Maybe I
ago.
wasn't clear on that, and I was one of those, I would like to have one. I didn't say,
Oh,
I want
that-
to meet, I would like to have
Okay.
one. And maybe that was my way of saying it. Maybe I should have stated it differently.
Okay.
I would request one, or whatever. I should have said request one. When I said I would like to have one, that meant, could we have one? I know I don't set meetings. I don't set meetings.
But
But when it
that's,
came to us, you know, I thought, okay, I can't
Well,
come
yeah,
in.
and that was
Yeah.
maybe between Arlene and I how it went, you know,
and if it would have been something we were voting on, then yes, but I mean, if it's just for him to give information, or, because I know he's gonna call you or talk to you at some point, you're gonna get it as well.
But I didn't ever get that information.
And nothing, if there wasn't a whole lot.
Wasn't there a handout or something?
Was there?
There was, it was put in your mailbox, a copy of
Okay,
everything
maybe
we
it's
had.
back there.
And then it's also YouTube, that we can watch it live too. It's also on YouTube. You can pull up that, and you'd have to talk with the tech. I mean, I thought Mike sent that out. He sent it to me, and I thought it went out to everybody, that it was YouTube, where you could watch the video.
But on my end, and I don't know about everybody else that was reading all these emails, it was like, okay, we're fussing at him, telling him to communicate with us. He does this, and then we're fussing at him for trying to schedule a meeting. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need to read all that anyway, but that's how I felt. I felt like I was just drug in the middle, and it was like, okay, you need to tell us something, but then,
Well, just give me some choices about when meetings are gonna be.
yeah, like, I feel like, I don't
That was the
know.
intent, was, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we need to speak more redneck time. See, I got it.
Anything else? Todd, Michael?
Todd.
No?
Well, I mean, choices, I'm with Judy, as long as I got choices, because, you know, we all have other lives. and-
Right.
And, you know,
There was
I'm good.
choices on that one.
otherwise.
Okay, so communication is good. It's enough.
And if I get a
Email.
problem, I'm gonna
That's
call
what
him.
it was.
Yeah.
about.
He knows that.
All right.
He knows I'm gonna call him.
Yeah, the options
Yeah.
that go on Sunday.
All right.
I'll try to do
Yeah.
better at sending out when I respond, I'm gonna look into this, or I did this, I talked to somebody today, but normally when I don't, if somebody calls, says there's such and such happening, this one's doing this, and it stops, then you would assume that I've addressed that. I mean, I assure you, anytime I get a call from any of the 5 of you with a problem, I will address it immediately.
Busted mouth
That's a
with an
given.
apple.
So whether.
That's a given.
Okay.
Now.
So then if we don't hear back, we know it's been
It's
addressed.
gonna be addressed.
But then when it happens
And then you need
again,
to contact me again.
which I've done it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And,
Okay,
because I went the next day.
okay.
Generally, when I get a complaint, or, or concern from any of you all, I go either that day, if there's not enough time in that day, I get it the next morning. I mean, I'm a lot of times with principals, I'm on the phone at 10, 11 o'clock at night talking about some of these things.
My apple situation's been resolved, by the way, from yesterday, so you can skip over that one now.
And I know we don't have to find out how it's handled, I understand that.
But just that it's been handled.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then,
Yeah, if
If
someone
there's a
comes to us
requir-
with a problem, a lot of times I don't have anything to take back to them to say, listen, this has been resolved.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I mean, I follow the chain of command and I pass the
Yeah.
problem to where
Well,
it
I
needs to
would
go.
have, Judy would have been sitting here tonight saying, no, you lied to me, because I would have told you it's been resolved, and you tell me they were there today, so it's not resolved yet, so.
And maybe she-
I think sometimes in my mind, I think it's resolved, and then it happens again,
Yeah.
a week later, or,
And when it's the
not
same
resolved.
group
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
involved, did he really address that?
We've got,
Okay.
along that same line of concern, we're talking 40, 45 kids every day gets in their car and goes out there on co-oping every day.
But is that the end of their school day?
Well,
Do they co-op and then come back?
I don't know that many of them have to come back for anything. Most of them, once they leave, they stay out.
Once they leave, they leave. I mean, I don't know if any come back very
Maybe
often.
that's,
Okay, we're on the downward spiral, so hang with me. All right, budgeting and financial accountability, very last one. We start out a little low, and we kind of pull it together there towards the end, 10.3, 10.4. So take a moment and please share your thoughts.
Well, since I've been on the board in February, I think that we're making progress in this.
Okay.
I mean, I really do. I mean, I might be wrong.
What progress do you see?
Well, I see more stuff coming to us.
Okay.
We did a needs assessment.
Okay.
We did, we're trying to get money back into the schools. We asked them tonight what they needed,
Yeah.
that type of stuff.
You're
So,
spending time on it, you're talking about budget.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, and I'm pretty sure we had a working session on it. So, I mean, I think it's coming. Don't get me wrong. It's not there yet, but it's coming.
We also have a new finance director that we could tell
Yes.
her what we
Yes.
wanted.
Yes, and
That helped a
Yes,
lot.
someone called her out there, yes. What about the contingency? So what is your contingency?
Almost 25%. Well, less than that since we allocated some of it
Okay,
last week, 2 weeks ago,
about 24%.
24%.
Without the raises.
is that by
Helping.
design?
Still would be, still 20%, that raises don't affect it.
It creates concern. I mean, we have the financial advisors, Dr. Bob and Dr. Bob. Are you familiar with Dr. Bob and Dr. Bob?
No.
Dr. Bob Arvin and Dr. Bob Wagner.
Oh, okay, Dr.
Okay.
Bob already, yes.
They've been advising us since, 2009 or so, Mr. Christie? But each year, well, many years, more recently, almost every year within the last 3, 4, 5, the tendency to underestimate revenue and overestimate expenses, and yes, I'm a business major and I understand how that works.
Yeah.
But when it comes up that we're saying we can't afford a
Yeah.
raise for our folks, because, in May, when we were doing the tentative budget, we were looking at a $650,000 shortfall, and then we get to July, and we get the annual financial report, and it's not like that at all. We have an 11.5 million contingency. And then we get to September when we're doing our working budget, and we've got a $14.5 million contingency.
Okay, so this sounds like a working session conversation
Yes.
that you're going to have as a part of this improvement on.
And we did
Progress
that.
made, yeah.
And we've made some adjustments with, but it's, not being, when we tell our staffs that we cannot afford to give them a raise,
Yeah,
and then we're sitting on $14.5 million,
yeah.
that's all of us have had concerns about that. And so I'm thinking that, probably with the change in the finance director, she understands,
Yeah.
where we're coming from, and she's providing information that, sometimes we don't even know what to ask for. Even with the previous finance director, anything I would ask for, she would provide. But sometimes I didn't know what to ask for.
Yeah, you need like a recommendation
Yes.
is what you were asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
but I see, I'm like Todd, I do see significant improvement already in the very short time that she's been here.
Great.
It's awesome. Anything you want to do differently with budget and finance, or you just want to continue doing what you're doing?
Well, I think we definitely need to be trained some more.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, that's an integral part of what we do as a
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
Oversight of finances is the,
Do you anticipate that at like KSBA, annual session, like in February it's coming up? I'm sure
Yeah.
there's gonna be some sessions there.
Yeah.
You could always have KSBA and those tax finance people come here. But yeah, either way. Either way is totally fine.
And that might be something you hit maybe in April, right before we do the budget in May, you know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? Just something
yeah.
like that. Do a small mini work session on that or something.
Yeah. You could even do it annually. Just set up an annual process. All right, what about fulfilling educational needs? Are you confident your budget is fulfilling your needs educationally here in Clark County? Does it speak to your achievement gaps? Are you putting your money where it needs to be put?
I think we're going to now. We're starting with.
well, I mean, establishing those three positions for address, that helps to address the gap thing
Yeah.
and student achievement generally, but we're getting there on some of it.
Okay.
Developing.
Anything else on budget and finance?
I think the information that Alicia has been giving us that's going to allow us quarterly to see where we're at. I mean, she gave a great report that kind of showed everybody where they were at. And I think that when we get to our tentative budget the next time, that we can make some really good decisions about whether we can hire interventionists, whether we can hire STEM teachers, you know, things like that we didn't have access to last year. Last year, we were at our tentative budget meeting with our hands behind our back, just saying, my gosh, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
And what are we gonna cut out, and what are we gonna do? And, you know, our principals were faced with getting a 10% cut in their Section 6 money, and so there goes back the board trust and all those kind of things. I mean, everything starts, you know.
Yep, it's all
if you wanna-
related.
If you wanna get a little standoffish on administrators, and we're administrators, or former administrators, take some money away from us.
Yeah, that's
And,
right.
now that we're getting what we've got, we should be able to make better decisions about what staff we can add on. I mean, we're very, you know, and like, everybody should be reluctant about reoccurring expenses. We've all got to do that. But, you know, if we're comfortable enough with our budget when it gets to the tentative budget, that we can put some reoccurring positions in there, but I think we're gonna have better information this time to be able to do that. And I like the way that's going right now. It's really been good.
All right, yay. Okay, just real quick review, because I want you to think about 1, 2, or 3 things you want to do in the future. So let's just review about where we are. So on your vision directed standard, you talked about your working sessions are working, agenda input early as possible, needing some advance notice of board documents, just being able to read and prepare. Your 2-year cycle of mission, vision, and goals is working. You're probably coming up on the time to review your strategic planning every 2 years. Is that what you decided? All right, so I'm gonna put a green here, because that's a to-do, your strategic planning reviewing. Everything, your advance notice of board documents possibly, just being aware that that could be an issue. Agenda input early as possible. All right, so there's a couple of things you called out, right? All right, community involvement. How do we broaden our community involvement? I think that was a rhetorical question, but we have select people we see all the time. That's what we're trying to do. Community discussions coming up, that's a great opportunity. Maybe it's a step 1. Your previous meeting on business and schools, you previously did that. Maybe you want to do it in the future. Would be great to have that dialogue. Your media relationship with your new person's improving. And Mr. Christie is reaching out to him or her and trying to get some good news out there. So that's definitely a to-do item that you're doing. What do you think about this business school meeting? Is that something you want to think about? Question mark?
Question mark.
Okay. All right, so there's some opportunities. You might want to see what your media relations and your community discussion brings you and then go from there. Just a thought. All right, effective leadership. There could be value in a board orientation for new members. I think this pops up on a couple of standards. Having a
Actually, it's our board policy.
that you have a board orientation?
Yes.
Okay. That's a definite to do then, because we know what we said about policies. Visual presence, sounds like you all have that. Comment about principals coming in, being here to read their requests. Maybe they could be here for additional questions. Okay, aligning your goals with the agenda. That was a definite consensus item, as I recall. And then putting the documentation, supporting documentation with your agenda item aligned to your goal. That would help with a lot of different areas. All right. So we definitely need to think about our board orientation and our agenda change. Data, positive area. We often need to reassess the results of our decisions on data. So we need feedback, or we need to revisit it to see if our data decisions are working. And that might be just in the form of your discussion or your motion, you know, whenever you're looking at this data, might be just a part of your board discussion. If you're voting to do it, I'm voting to accept whatever, but I want to see a follow-up in 6 months or a year. Let's revisit it this time next year. And that way you're on the record. Highlighting the positives, how important that is. So that you have a lot of positives going on with your data, but getting that word out, which is an opportunity for your community discussion also. And if you reignite your conversation with your business. All right, climate and culture. We're not sure how to assess that. Being involved daily, assessing daily, recent recognitions help. I think you just want to be aware of the climate and culture and maybe not take any action here from what I can see. Learning organization, you have nationally certified teachers, you provide sub-support for them. Professional development, so your board supports that, your schools also support that. There is a thought that maybe there's not as many promotional opportunities from within as there could be. Training, so after any training, coming back and sharing with the board, the next meeting would be awesome. It will keep it fresh in your mind. It also helps the public understand what you're being trained in and why. So I would encourage you, that's kind of a low-hanging fruit that you could do pretty easily. Just having taken 15 or 20 minutes, 5 minutes apiece, you can say a lot in 5 minutes, you know. So if you're going to sum up KSBA annual conference, I bet you could do it in 5 minutes. You know, what was your top session and what was the worst session or whatever. Your top 2 sessions, let's not get into the bad ones. But your top 2 sessions and why. Share it with everybody. Communicating the what, why, for parents, businesses, PTAs. I think every school district deals with that. Being aware it's always an opportunity, it's always a need. New board member orientation, here's that thing again. Policies, roles, budgets. So I think that's a definite action item. And what is this? solving. Having different perspectives, maybe not so much here since you're all educators, but it underscores the importance of reaching out to parents, hearing your business perspective, your community perspective, working sessions, just being aware of problem solving, taking the time to brainstorm. And along with that is the innovation and creativity. Great idea about moving meetings around, but could be some issues with logistics. Again, just being aware that taking that time to have these conversations, brainstorming, being willing to accept that everything's not going to work like Todd did. He was very accepting. And ethics, conduct relationships, the need to implement the policies we have, possibly review policies. Again, this could be, 1 or 2 policies a month as homework. You review them. You have an agenda item. I'm just throwing this out. Where, does anybody have any questions? Did anybody see any inconsistencies? And if you don't see anything, you move on. If it's something to discuss, then you bring it up. And, again, you will find things buried in those policies that need reviewing, but that's just an option for you to consider. Being informed enough, so maybe following up when questions arise that things have been addressed, just the need to know that things have been addressed, and maybe being able to inform the person who reported it. So possibly a policy review, that would be maybe up to you all to discuss, and then the follow-up information part. Budget. Very much progress made. You've done a needs assessment. You're getting more information. You've got a fantastic training or finance person providing you all kinds of reports and helping you make decisions in the future. There's always a need for more training when it comes to finance, so you can do that through KSBA or have those folks come here if that's easier. It allowed you to, these conversations allowed you to establish 3 positions, address some gaps. Contingency, high perception, whether or not the needs of the districts can be accommodated, affordability, so making that apparent to the public. So, what do we think? What I'm going to do when I get home tomorrow or the next couple of days, I'll type this up and send it to Mr. Christie. He can share it with everyone. I'll just have everything that you've stated. I'll give you the green on the things I think you want to take action on. It's your all's decision, it's your all's discussion. We suggest that you keep this on your board agenda at least quarterly. Just review of your self-assessment plan. So once I send this to Mr. Christie and he shares, you decide what you want to do. And then you keep it on your agenda quarterly, see how you're doing. Make it a live, active document, not something you just put up. Again, the importance is where you are today. It's not, the comments or necessarily the scores, but that this is a starting point and you can build upon it. So as you mark off some of these things, you can get down to the nitty-gritty and do other things that maybe weren't a high priority. We think these 10 standards and these 44 indicators are indicative of the job of a school board member. We think it's descriptive. You have an assessment, so we welcome your feedback on that as well. Do you think the 10 standards and the indicators represent your work? You don't have to give those to me tonight. Mr. Christie or his secretary could send them into KSBA, that would be fine, or you can send them to me. This is a pilot project, but we are rolling it out to all districts in Kentucky this month, actually. So, appreciate your time and your energy and your comments and 100% attendance. I welcome any comments you have now, but I really welcome the data feedback that you can send in, because we would still tweak the process a little bit based on feedback. You're about the 15th district in Kentucky to do this. So we got a few more to go. 100 plus something. I can't do math at 9 o'clock, so.
It's about 173.
Okay, thank you. Comments? Good, bad, or otherwise? I'm okay with it. I'm not gonna cry on the way home if you say this is the biggest waste of time.
No, I think we have a lot of work to do, it points out. And I think it's helpful in trying to focus some of our efforts, so.
Every district has a lot of work to do, so you're not alone. It's just, every district is different. So, you know, this district is focused over here and this district is focused over there. And that's why this work is so fascinating, because it's great to see different districts
Just
get to
another-
the same result. but
It's just
differently.
another tool with checks and balances.
Yes, absolutely. You know, you may not want to do this every year, you may want to do it every 2 or 3 years, and you may have an active document for a year or two, and then you'll be ready for the next one. When there's board turnover, sometimes that's helpful to have a process like this. We have several boards that are going to have a lot of turnover, unlike you guys, so they wanted to wait until after November to kind of talk about it and see what happens, but it's been a pleasure. I hope it's been useful. Again, I welcome your comments on the evaluation that you can send in.
Great.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
would just send your evaluations, went to Arlene tomorrow. We'll just put it all into one document, and send it straight to.
Well, let's, can we have a couple of days to, not
Okay.
tomorrow?
Oh, absolutely. Next week, your next meeting even is fine, but we just really are counting on feedback in order to know what we need to tweak. And I'm gonna take these with me, but you'll get a follow-up.
But as soon as she gets me the document that you put together tonight, I'll email it to everybody.
Sounds good. Yes, sir.
All right. Ashley?
You're up.
Oh, you ready?
Yeah?
Yeah,
You got any other business?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Richie. Second by Mr. Wilson. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Board's adjourned at 9:01 PM. Thank you, everybody.
Everybody can stay.
Oh, Lordy. I guess we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want one next Tuesday?
Do we have a Tuesday off next week?
Election day.
Yeah.
Sort of, kind of,
Well, we
maybe.
originally had one scheduled, but
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this was supposed to
Okay.
be election day, but it ended up getting.
This is what it's on.